Chapter 9:14. Chu Yang was silent. He recalled the memories of the first tribulation sword master. I had the heart to turn this brother into a tribulation to stabilize the continent. Who would have thought that I would end up like this? He couldn't help but sigh deeply. From Zi Xieching's words, he finally understood some problems that he couldn't figure out previously. Chu Yang finally understood one point. This black blood forest was the folding point of the heavens continent, and the function of the tribulation sword was to maintain the stability of the continent. The tribulation sword master appeared once every 10,000 years. His so-called purpose wasn't to unify the upper three heavens, but to use this boundless killing intent to turn into blood-colored fate energy. With the tribulation as a guide, and with some unknown formation or secret technique, he maintained the stability of the continent for 10,000 years. After the boundary of the black blood forest regained its color after 1,000 years, it turned from hard to soft as usual. This proved that this folding point was about to collapse and couldn't hold on any longer. It was about to collapse, and as long as the tribulation sword master succeeded in reversing the situation, this brother would become a tribulation and be able to stabilize the upper three heavens once again. Or else, it would definitely collapse completely. Just like 10,000 years ago, the entire upper three heavens and lower three heavens would turn into dust and nothing would be left. Thinking of this, Chu Yang's heart suddenly felt heavy. He used his consciousness to ask the sword spirit, "Is that so?" The sword spirit didn't dare to answer and only nodded. Chu Yang was stunned. He had always hoped that he could open the plane channel earlier to bring his brothers up and create a great undertaking together. But at this moment, he suddenly hesitated. If they came up, would they really have to turn into tribulations and sacrifice themselves to the continent? If they didn't come up, they would also be crushed to death below. This actually became a dead end. Chu Yang clenched his fists tightly and said lightly in a low voice, "But no matter what, I won't let them die." The sword spirit said somewhat sympathetically, "But, if it really comes to that, I'm afraid it's no longer up to you." Chu Yang sneered. Chu Yang's sneer was filled with despair and determination. It was a chilling sneer. The sword spirit suddenly felt a surge of fear. He understood Chu Yang's plan and said hoarsely, "Could it be that you? Could it be that you?" Chu Yang sneered. "That's right. If I really have no choice by then, I still have one last move to use." The sword spirit was stunned. Last move. How could he not know Chu Yang's last move? "With my heart's blood, I will destroy all tribulations." That was a move to kill oneself before killing the enemy. Chu Yang said slowly, "If we can't avoid fate in the end, we can only do so. With my heart's blood, I will destroy all tribulations. After that, if I could turn back time, then I definitely wouldn't choose to become brothers with them. If I couldn't turn back time, then my death wouldn't affect anything. Even if my brothers still had to die, I still died before them. They did not die in front of me. This way, although it's selfish, at least for myself, I have a clear conscience towards my brothers, because in the end, I didn't use my brothers in exchange for anything." The sword spirit let out a long sigh and said, "Have you ever thought that if you weren't the master of the calamity sword and someone else was, your brother would still die? They might not even live that long before they die." Chu Yang smiled warmly, "But that's not because of me. As long as I am here, I will not allow them to die before me." The sword spirit opened his mouth, but felt that no matter what he said, it would be pale and weak. So, he had no choice but to close his mouth and not speak. Chu Yang also didn't speak. Then, he suddenly thought of something. He turned around and looked at Zi Xieching with a burning gaze. "Why are you looking at me?" Zi Xieching asked strangely. Chu Yang hesitated for a while and suddenly asked on a whim, "Miss Zi, with your cultivation, I'm afraid you're already invincible in this world. May I ask, if you were to compare with the person who distorted the heavens back then, who would win?" Zi Xieching said amusedly, "If I'm a sparrow, then he's a great rock flying above the heavens. What's there to compare?" Chu Yang took a breath and let out a long breath. He muttered, "This world is so big." Wei Wuyan couldn't help but be speechless. With Zi Xieching's cultivation, she actually compared herself to a sparrow while comparing the other party to a great rock. Both Wei Wuyan and Chu Yang were silent, but their hearts were different. Wei Wuyan's heart was very calm. He had already accepted this fact. That person was a god. Who could fold the heavens with one hand? Such a person only existed in legends. But Chu Yang's heart was like a pot of boiling water, suddenly boiling at this moment. In his heart, an idea suddenly popped up. If I want to save the lives of my brothers, if I don't want my brothers to sacrifice themselves, then I must reach the level of the person who folded the heavens back then. Only when my strength reaches that level, then I can say that I can save people or subvert. Subvert, not subvert the heavens, but subvert this world. Or use my own strength to add another layer of seal to this continent. A layer of seal that no longer needed and would never need the catastrophe sword. To achieve that goal, at this moment, it was no different from a fool's dream. But Chu Yang had set such a goal in his heart at this moment. I want to fold the heavens. Chu Yang said in a low voice, I also want to reach the level of folding the heavens. Only then can I live my life without regrets. Although Chu Yang's voice was low, it was full of determination and unwavering determination. He said this sentence word by word, but it was as if he was being hammered by the hammer of heaven and earth. Every word fell heavily onto the ground, turning into an imprint on his soul that would never disappear. Wei Wuyan looked at him in shock. His heart almost jumped out of his throat because of what he said. Zi Xieching looked up at Chu Yang with a very solemn and serious gaze for the first time. She said, folding the heavens is not a skill. If one can create a heavens from nothing, then that's a great way. Creating a heavens? Chu Yang muttered to himself. Wei Wuyan was shocked speechless by what these two daring guys said. He opened his mouth and looked at the two of them, as if he had seen ghosts. Black Blood Forest was silent. For a moment, the three of them were silent. After a long time, Chu Yang finally heaved a sigh of relief and broke this indescribable silence. He said, if we go out of Black Blood Forest from here, we will have to face the Lan clan, Zhuge clan, and Yi clan, right? Wei Wuyan said, yes, if we go out from here, we will be in the bordering area of the three big clans. Chu Yang nodded lightly and suddenly asked, Brother Wei, there's something that I still don't understand. Wei Wuyan said, what is it? It's the ballad of the big clans of the heavens, Chu Yang said, a piece of land in the east, a flute in the southeast, and thousands of miles of waves in the west. It's the clans, Xiao clan and Chen clan. And it's the sky-shocking stone in the northwest, the pride of the Ling clan in the southwest, and the fragrance of celestial orchids in the south. It's the Shi clan, Ling clan, and Lan clan. The swords and sabers of the north are sharp, while the Zhuge clan of the south are mighty. Only the Li clan, the Zhuge clan, and the Yi clan, are they not? Yes. It's completely correct. Wei Wuyan was confused. What's the problem? Don't you think it's repetitive? Chu Yang asked in surprise. Look, the fragrance of celestial orchids in the south, and Zhuge clan and Yi clan, are all in the south. And the southeast and southwest are already there. There are two big clans in the south, but there's none in the northeast. So it's about this. Wei Wuyan smiled. The south is very big. Compared to the north, the south is vast and the climate is warm and comfortable. Also, because there are more wise people in the Zhuge clan, this is the feng shui that they chose. As for the Lan clan, it's because the 7 stars immortal orchid needed by the clan's martial arts must grow in the south. Therefore, it's not strange for them to share the south with the Zhuge clan. He paused for a while and said, as for the northeast, that's the base camp of the 3 stars divine clan. The divine clans appear in the northeast. Normally, no one dares to go in. And the headquarters of the law enforcement officers is also located in the northeast. That's equivalent to the territory of the law enforcement officers. So, although there's the 3 stars divine clan in the northeast, it's the most stable place in the entire upper 3 heavens. I see. Chu Yang nodded and said, then, how far is it from here to the Wind Thunder platform in the northwest? One can enter and exit the one-line heavens through the wind and thunder. Wei Wuyan looked at Chu Yang. How do you know that dangerous place? Then, he frowned and said, it's extremely dangerous there. Moreover, the climate is completely different from here. Also, the journey is extremely long. I've never been there in my life. If I calculate the distance, it should be 5,000 miles, 5,000 miles? Chu Yang exclaimed. Why did I hear that it's only 37,000 miles from the southeast to the northwest? And we've already walked more than 5,000 miles. Wei Wuyan smiled. The journey is indeed 37,000 miles. This is not wrong at all. But that's under the condition that we don't take a detour. But if you don't take a detour, how can you reach the northwest? Chu Yang was disappointed and said, so 37,000 miles is just a straight line distance. Wei Wuyan laughed. That's right. As he said, he couldn't help but laugh. Shaking his head, he said, 37,000 miles. This is really the calculation of life. Chu Yang lowered his head dejectedly. Damn, it's still so far. My fifth fragment of the tribulation's sword. Let's speed up, Zi Xieching urged. The four of them sped up at the same time. After walking for another 200 miles, Chu Yang and Wei Wuyan simultaneously felt that their bodies were lighter. The ability to control their divine senses had returned. It seemed that from here onwards, they were out of the restrictions of the Black Blood Forest. Just when they were about to reach the small mountain that Wei Wuyan had pointed out, Zi Xieching suddenly frowned and waved her hands. Everyone stopped and looked at her in confusion. Wei Wuyan, the place where your teacher lives. There are so many experts now. Zi Xieching frowned and asked. Chapter 9:15. Many experts. It can't be. I've deliberately found the most secluded place for my teacher's residence. When I enter and exit the Black Blood Forest, I also take a detour and don't dare to reveal any traces. Why are there so many people? Wei Wuyan said in surprise. There are many experts. 7 or 8 of them are not below you, and 3 or 4 of them are far above you. Zi Xieching frowned as she listened. She said lightly, and their murderous intents are very strong. Strong murderous intents. Wei Wuyan's face changed. Not good. Could it be that they've chased after us? The law enforcement interrogation hall? Chu Yang asked. Yes. Wei Wuyan was very anxious. He was about to rush over. Wait. Chu Yang said calmly, Brother Wei, let's make a good plan first. You can also tell us the cause and effect of this matter, so that we can have a good idea. Wei Wuyan said, okay, let's talk as we walk. Chu Yang nodded silently and sped up. The law enforcement interrogation hall was the most powerful hall in the law enforcement circle. Apart from the elders and the elders, there were as many experts as there were clouds inside. My teacher's name is Hong Wuliang, and he has the honorific title of Supreme Icy Snow. 1,000 years ago, he was also an all-powerful figure. And the law enforcement master of the interrogation hall is called Lang Yilang, and he has the nickname of Raging Wave. This person is actually from the same hometown as my teacher. Back then, the two of them had a very good relationship. When they were young, they had once roamed the martial world together. Wei Wuyan explained the ins and outs of the matter as they hurried on. Later on, my teacher and Lang Yilang met a girl who was being chased by bandits at the same time. The two of them acted together and saved the girl. The girl was very beautiful, and my teacher and Lang Yilang took a fancy to her at the same time. Needless to say, the two of them had turned against each other because of this girl. Chu Yang looked up and sighed. Femme fatale. Femme fatale. As he said, he couldn't help but glance at Zi Xieching. He empathized with Wei Wuyan's teacher. Zi Xieching was expressionless. She glanced at him and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, after settling the matter of Wei Wuyan's master, you need to improve your cultivation. Chu Yang was on the verge of tears. He wished he could slap his own mouth a few times. I told you not to talk nonsense. Don't talk nonsense. You fucking talked nonsense again. A woman can't marry 2 husbands. In the end, that woman still chose my master and became my master's wife. As Wei Wuyan ran, his words were still clear and logical. Lang Yilang left heartbroken. If that's all, then it's nothing much. Although Lang Yilang was sad, he didn't do anything despicable. Wei Wuyan let out a wry laugh. I hate Lang Yilang to the core, but when it comes to this matter, I'm not willing to deliberately smear his name. Although Lang Yilang is a little biased, he's still considered a sexual lover. Chu Yang nodded, understood. After a few decades, my master's wife suddenly contracted a strange illness. It was a terminal illness of the bloodline. My master sought treatment from many places, but in the end, she couldn't be saved and died in my master's arms. Wei Wuyan's voice became low and deep. At that time, Lang Yilang was already a low-level law enforcement officer. When he received the news, he rushed over from afar to offer his condolences. In the morning hall, he was emotional and heartbroken. He vomited blood and fainted on the spot. After he woke up, he fell out with my master and blamed him for not taking good care of the person he loved. My master tried to explain, but he just wouldn't listen. Everyone's persuasion was useless. He cut ties with my master on the spot and fought with him. Everyone was there at that time. Lang Yilang didn't succeed and was injured by one of my master's brothers. Before he left, he cut off his finger and swore to the heavens that he would fight my master to the death for the rest of his life. He swore that he would make my master suffer the cruelest torture in the world until he died. When Wei Wuyan said this, both Chu Yang and Zi Sheqing sighed deeply. The two of them really didn't have much to say about such matters. This Lang Yilang could be considered a sentimental person. When the person he loved didn't choose him, he left heartbroken. When he returned, she was already gone. After several decades, he was actually still heartbroken and vomited blood and fainted on the spot. This showed how deep his love was. He had never married in his entire life. This also showed that he had used up all the feelings he had in his life to fall in love with her back then. It was just that even though his infatuation was pitiable, his actions were detestable. No matter what, that woman was already married and was someone else's wife. Moreover, she had died because of an incurable disease and not because she had been abused by her husband's family. It was very wrong of Lang Yilang to make such a fuss. That Hong Wuliang was really tragic enough. He was already heartbroken over the death of his beloved wife. Yet an old rival in love popped up to denounce him. And he even got into a fight in the morning hall. It really wasn't easy for him to hold himself back. Chu Yang thought to himself, actually, there's only one thing to say, regardless of whether she's the person you love, she's still my wife. What right do you have to ask me about this? What status do you have to ask me about this? But that Hong Wuliang probably didn't have the guts to say this, right? After losing his beloved wife, my master devoted himself to martial arts and reached the martial saint level within a few hundred years. Lang Yilang, on the other hand, was determined to take revenge, and his cultivation also improved by leaps and bounds. Wei Wuyan said, whenever the two of them met, it would be a battle of life and death. My master's cultivation was higher than Lang Yilang's, so he showed mercy every time and didn't kill him. But not only did Lang Yilang not appreciate my master's painstaking efforts, he even became more and more aggressive. He actually remembered all the people who had fought with him among those who went to offer their condolences back then. In the future, he used all kinds of means to take revenge, either by framing others or making use of his rights as a law enforcement officer to arrest them one by one and persecute them to death. That's not right at all. Chu Yang and Zi Sheqing said at the same time, even if there's a grudge between them, even if he's sad and indignant, there's no need to lay his hands on innocent people. That's right. Wei Wuyan said, it's also precisely because of this that my master and Lang Yilang truly became mortal enemies. So much so that my master even took the initiative to travel all over the world to look for Lang Yilang and seek justice for his dead brothers. But Lang Yilang disappeared without a trace from then on and disappeared from this world. When he reappeared several hundred years later, Lang Yilang had already become a warden of the law enforcement interrogation hall. The two of them fought several battles. Lang Yilang had many henchmen and my master was no match for him, so he could only look for opportunities. Several hundred years passed again and my master became a supreme martial artist. Then, he wanted to look for Lang Yilang to settle scores. But at that time, Lang Yilang took the initiative to issue a challenge and invited my master to a fair battle. When Wei Wuyan reached this point, Chu Yang and Zi Sheqing already understood everything. They couldn't help but sigh deeply in their hearts. Just because of the affection back then, the two of them were entangled with each other for their entire lives. Although it could be said that they became two supreme martial artists because of this, the two of them still fought to the death over this matter even after they became supreme martial artists. It could be seen that the affection back then was deeply engraved in their hearts. my master went alone. The two of them had a drink first as a parting of life and death. Then, the two of them had a great battle on the mountain. But at the critical moment, when my master and Lang Ilang exchanged injuries, each of them struck the other with a palm. It was only then that my master realized that Lang Ilang's arm had turned into the color of an entire purple crystal jade core. What he was using at this moment was actually the purple crystal hand. The purple crystal hand can cause one to go bankrupt. Wei Wuyan said, "My master's mind was in a mess and he wanted to escape." But Lang Ilang pursued him all the way. He didn't hesitate to exchange injuries for injuries and struck my master 3 more times. My master fled back with serious injuries and immediately took me to a place to live in seclusion. Only a few days later, the place where we originally lived was already reduced to ashes. All these years, the illness of my master's purple crystal hand became more and more serious. Since 100 years ago, his purple crystals had already been depleted. I roamed the martial world alone, desperately earning purple crystals to extend my master's life. Until today. When Wei Wuyan finished, he heaved a long sigh. With the purple crystal hand, one's path could never be cut off. If the supply of purple crystals was cut off one day, from the next day onwards, the number of purple crystals needed would double, and so on and so forth. All these years, for the sake of his master's injuries, this Wuyan expert who had never begged anyone in his life had really been driven to a corner. Ordinary people could still rest and recuperate after completing a mission and find other ways to enjoy and relax. But no matter how difficult a mission Wei Wuyan had completed, the next one was already in his hands. He didn't dare to stop for even a moment. He was afraid that one day his master's purple crystals would be cut off and he wouldn't be able to continue anymore. It's indeed not easy, Zi Sheqing chuckled. Zi Sheqing chuckled. Then, her face turned cold. Her slender eyebrows furrowed slightly, revealing boundless murderous intent. But this matter really deserves to be killed. Both of them deserve to be killed. Both of them deserve to be killed. Wei Wuyan was stunned. Even Chu Yang was a little puzzled. Lang Ilang deserves to be killed. It's one thing for him to like a woman, but this woman is already married. Even if he can't let go of her, he should at least hide it in his heart. To make a scene in the mourning hall of another person's wife, saying that the other person didn't take good care of his beloved. It's simply laughable and despicable. Just this alone is enough to warrant the death penalty, because he caused a dead person's reputation to be tarnished because of him, not to mention that he did so many other wrong things after that. Even death can't wipe out his crimes. Zi Sheqing said coldly and sternly, "Perhaps you men will think that this is a kind of deep affection that is worthy of praise. But let me tell you, in a woman's heart, this kind of infatuation is even more unbearable than that of an enemy who has committed heinous crimes, because this kind of deep affection will destroy her peaceful and happy life at any time. And what is the most important thing for a woman? Once she is married, the most important things are her family, husband, and children. Lang Ilang's deep affection can easily take away all these from a woman's life. No matter how loyal a woman is, as long as her husband has the slightest bit of suspicion, then there will never be a day of peace and it will all end in tragedy. To be deeply in love with a woman whom you like and who also likes you is a virtue. But to be deeply in love with a woman whom you like but who doesn't like you is torture and destruction. This kind of man deserves to be killed even more than a perverted thief. The murderous intent in Zi Sheqing's eyes was overwhelming. Chapter 916. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Chu Yang and Wei Wuyan were stunned at the same time. Net of nets, indeed, the two of them considered the problem from a man's point of view. They indeed felt that although Lang Ilang had committed heinous crimes, he was deeply affectionate and well-intentioned. He was really a pitiful person in love. Indeed, a hateful person would definitely have a pitiful side. However, they didn't expect that coming from a woman's mouth, it would become a heinous crime. Chu Yang thought deeply for a while and finally said, "That's right. This is very reasonable." He let out a long sigh and said, "When we men talk about love, we usually stand on the man's side. Sometimes, it's inevitable that we'll be one-sided. Love is always two-sided. If we don't care about the woman's feelings, I believe that we won't be a good husband. When he said this, Chu Yang was thinking about Mo Qingwu. He thought, what is Qingwu like? If Qingwu becomes my wife, then what should I do? Wei Wuyan nodded. At first, Zi Sheqing's words seemed a little extreme. However, after thinking about it carefully, he knew that what she said actually made a lot of sense. For a woman, a man's deep and unforgettable love for a woman was undoubtedly the highest affirmation of herself. Therefore, before marriage, a woman would really enjoy such deep feelings. However, after the other party married someone else, if such deep feelings still existed, it would become a nightmare that the woman couldn't get rid of. She would be constantly on tenterhooks about whether the other party would suddenly appear in front of her and her husband. Since a woman had decided to marry a man, she had already decided where she would belong for the rest of her life. Therefore, she would care a lot about her marriage and her life. If someone wanted to destroy her marriage, in her heart, no matter how good this person had been to her in the past, at this moment, he would be an abominable enemy, because as long as it was a woman, she would know that a husband's suspicion could easily destroy a marriage that could have lasted forever. Net of nets, just as men knew that a woman's jealousy was unreasonable, similarly, a man's suspicion was also absolutely unreasonable. A woman's jealousy could be resolved, but once a man's suspicion arose, there would never be a time when it would disappear until the death of the marriage. A man could endure the humiliation of being groomed, but he would never endure being cuckolded. Therefore, if you love a woman and she already has a home, then it's best not to date her with the idea of not being lovers, but being friends, because she's no longer alone. Beside her, there is always a pair of eyes, watching her and you vigilantly, even if he was full of smiles. But sometimes, a careless look or action from you can bring endless grievances and mental pain to the person you love. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. If your wife and her ex-lover were to chat and laugh together, you wouldn't feel comfortable either. So if you truly love me, please let me go. After that, her emotions and sorrows will have nothing to do with you. It might seem cold and emotionless, but it was the highest level of love. Lang Yilong should be killed. However, Hong Wuliang deserves to be killed even more. Zi Sheqing said coldly. He clearly knew that Lang Yilong was such a person, yet he showed mercy and didn't kill him. It was only when Lang Yilong killed all of his friends and brothers that he started to take action. Ho! A man like him doesn't deserve to be called a man. Firstly, in front of his wife's coffin, he actually allowed Lang Yilong to claim that his wife was Lang Yilong's most beloved person. This is equivalent to allowing him to slander his wife's reputation, and he even explained it to him. That's one sin. Secondly, when Lang Yilong challenged him to a duel, he was indirectly slandering his deceased wife for the second time, yet he still let him go. That's two sins. Thirdly, his friends died because of him. He was the one who caused the deaths of his friends and brothers, and not Lang Yilong. That's three sins. Fourthly, for so many years, he enjoyed his disciples' offerings with a clear conscience, completely ignoring the fact that his purple crystal hand had already destroyed his disciple's life. His selfishness is so infuriating. That's 4 sins. The combined punishment of 4 sins is a capital offense that deserves to be hacked into pieces. Zi Sheqing said coldly, a man like this is unfaithful to his wife, unfaithful to his friends, and unloving to his brothers. He's overcautious and indecisive. Living is disgusting. He might as well die early and reincarnate earlier so that fewer people will die because of him. Wei Wuyan was furious. You! How dare you say that about my master? Zi Sheqing said dispassionately, your master? The moment I see him, I'll kill him with my own hands. Your master? Marrying your master's wife is actually not as blissful as marrying Lang Yilong back then, because Lang Yilong took the initiative to bear everything for her, while your master was passive. Although Lang Yilong isn't a good person, he more or less has some sense of responsibility as a man. As for your master, he's no longer worthy of being called a man. Wei Wuyan said coldly, since that's the case, I won't trouble you anymore. He turned and hurried away. He had originally wanted to make use of Zi Sheqing's terrifying cultivation to kill the enemy. However, Zi Sheqing's words had crossed Wei Wuyan's bottom line. From the perspective of a bystander, How could Wei Wuyan not know that although Zi Sheqing's words were extreme, they were indeed the truth? Moreover, his master's indecisiveness had persisted for his entire life. But facts were facts. He couldn't admit it. Because the person Zi Sheqing was scolding was his master, the person who had raised him up and nurtured him into a talent. Even if he was really guilty, he shouldn't say it himself. Moreover, his master had always been a passive recipient and victim in this matter. Therefore, Wei Wuyan resolutely gave up on seeking help and went to save his master alone. In order to avoid making things difficult for Chu Yang, he didn't say goodbye to Chu Yang when he left. What you said is the truth and reasonable, but you're too direct, Chu Yang walked over and complained. You mean, you're on Wei Wuyan's side? Zi Sheqing turned to look at Chu Yang, her gaze deep and serene. Yes. Chu Yang nodded without hesitation. Even if what you said is reasonable, but there's one thing you can't change. That's his master. In other words, if the person you're looking for had made such a mistake and others were scolding him in front of you, what would you do? Zi Sheqing's gaze turned cold. No one can scold him in front of me, Chu Yang said coldly, but you scolded Wei Wuyan's master in front of him. Put yourself in his shoes, what would you do? Wei Wuyan is already very polite to you. Zi Sheqing's gaze froze. You're criticizing me? Why, can't I? Chu Yang sneered. Is it because your cultivation is high that no one has criticized you before? Should everyone be afraid of you and coax you? If that's the case, then you've misjudged me. I've tolerated you along the way only because you're a woman and I'm a man. That's all. If you think that I'm afraid of you, I'll look down on your IQ. What an unyielding man, Zi Sheqing said, not knowing whether she was praising or belittling him. Then, her voice suddenly softened and she said softly, I know that you men have your self-esteem, but women also have their own pursuits and bottom lines. A man's bottom line is whether a woman is loyal, but a woman's bottom line is whether a man is responsible. A man like Wei Wuyan's master is an irresponsible man. Even if his martial arts are high, he's still not a good match for a woman. I've been to countless plains, and in most of them, men are superior to women. It's normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. I admit this, but even if some men have 3 wives and 4 concubines, each of his wives and concubines loves him to the core. Why? Because this man is worthy of their love. And some men can only marry 1 wife in their lifetime, but his wife will make him a cuckold. Why? Because this man is not worthy of his wife's loyalty. Zi Sheqing said lightly, every woman is willing to be faithful to her husband until they grow old. No woman is born a slut. Do you understand this, Chu Yang? I understand, but it doesn't mean that I agree. Chu Yang said angrily, if you want to apologize, say it properly. Don't use such a condescending tone. Do others owe you anything? Zi Sheqing chuckled and said indifferently, what I said just now hurt Wei Wuyan's self-esteem. I will apologize to him for this later. Right is right, wrong is wrong. No matter how high my cultivation is, I've never denied doing something wrong. But, I apologize to Wei Wuyan because I shouldn't have scolded his master in front of him, not because I scolded him wrongly. When I see his master, I'll still scold him to his face. I need to make this clear in advance. Chu Yang was speechless. Facing such a stubborn person, he really couldn't do anything about it. Let's go. Otherwise, Wei Wuyan will lose his life, Zi Sheqing said lightly. Then, she laughed and said, actually, if I don't send Wei Wuyan away alone, how can you go up and risk your life to enter the Tao state? She smiled and led the way. At this time, you still haven't forgotten about that. Chu Yang was speechless and followed closely. After walking for less than 10 feet, Zi Sheqing suddenly turned her head and revealed a strange smile. What? Chu Yang asked vigilantly. You have to remember what I said just now, Zi Sheqing smiled and said. What? Chu Yang was alarmed. You have to think carefully about what you can do to deserve a woman's love. Zi Sheqing laughed and said, otherwise, if one of your future wives cheats on you, don't blame me for not reminding you. Chu Yang was fuming with anger and said without thinking, if I have a wife who cheats on me in the future, the one who cheats on me will definitely be you. Zi Sheqing's face turned red and then cold. Then, she said coldly, Chu Yang, you're so bold. You actually dare to tease me? Chu Yang said angrily, are you the only one who's allowed to tease me? Zi Xueqing nodded slowly and said, you wait. Then, she turned and left. Chu Yang followed her and thought, damn it, with your behavior, not to mention whether I'll be cheated on, even if you give yourself to me, I won't dare to accept it. Damn it. Who the hell can take it? Besides, she's a woman who has lived for hundreds of thousands of years. She's a peerless old woman. Chu Yang looked at the slim figure in front of him and thought, although I won't accept it even if you give yourself to me, I have to admit that this peerless old woman is also a peerless beautiful old woman. Chapter 9:17. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Zi Xueqing carried Chu Le on her back and sped along with Chu Yang. The speed of the two was so fast that it didn't take long for them to reach the foot of the mountain that Wei Wuyan named Little Green Mountain. Net, Chu Yang released his divine senses and couldn't help but be shocked. There were at least 30 to 40 experts searching around this Little Green Mountain. But from the looks of it, they hadn't found Wei Wuyan's master, Hong Wuliang. If they had found him, these people would have retreated long ago. Wei Wuyan went to the southwest direction. His movements are very careful. Zi Xueqing frowned and listened for a while. Then, she said, it seems that his master has been placed in the southwest direction. Chu Yang nodded. Since he's living in seclusion and doesn't want others to know, then even if he's in the mountains, he won't build any houses. That's too eye-catching. So, Wei Wuyan and his master must be living in a very secretive cave. Let's go over. Zi Xueqing smiled. Although I don't like a master like him, since you want to help him, I can only help you. Chu Yang snapped his fingers. After knowing each other for so long, this sentence of yours makes me feel the most comfortable. Zi Xueqing frowned and looked at him meaningfully. Then, she said, 3 times. Chu Yang said calmly, 3. What Zi Xueqing meant was that Chu Yang already owed her 3 times of abuse. At this critical juncture, she would keep it in mind for the time being. Chu Yang wasn't in a hurry. Anyway, I'm going to improve my strength. You're going to abuse me? You can help me improve, and I can also earn elixirs from you. Yes, 1 at a time, 3 at a time. Let's go, said Zi Xueqing. Okay. Chu Yang was energized. Let's go over secretly. Go over secretly? Zi Xueqing looked at him in surprise. Why do we have to go over secretly? Fight it out in the open. These people are really not enough for me to blow on. Chu Yang's head was full of sweat. They are not enough for you to blow on, but you won't do anything. The only one who will do anything is me, the coolie. I'm here, don't be afraid. Zi Xueqing patted her chest, full of confidence. Net, Chu Yang had a bitter look on his face as he followed this big sister out in large strides. She was valiant and spirited. He had only taken about 10 steps when he heard someone say, "Who is it?" Chu Yang swaggered and said, "It's me." A black-clothed man appeared in front of a tree. He suspiciously looked at Chu Yang. "Who are you?" Chu Yang laughed. "I am who I am." The black-clothed man's face darkened. His eyes were filled with mockery and cruelty. "You're you? Who do you think you are?" Chu Yang twisted his neck and said with a smile, "If you're not mistaken, I'm a man." The black-clothed man's face changed, and he said furiously, "Bastard." Chu Le, who was at the side, couldn't help but giggle. These 3 questions and 3 answers made him not know whether to laugh or cry. This person's question was very regular, but Chu Yang's answer was purely a stroke of genius. The black-robed man looked in the direction of the laughter and saw Zi Xueqing standing beside Chu Le. Zi Xueqing's clothes were as white as snow, and her hair was like clouds. She just stood there, but it was as if she was standing in the moonlight. This ordinary place was suddenly filled with a celestial aura when she stood there. It made people feel that this was not the human world at all. Instead, it should be a bejeweled jade palace, a sky-high pavilion. No one could describe her beauty, and no one could describe her appearance in detail. In short, she was like a celestial fairy who had suddenly descended to the human world. She stood there quietly, her face cold and indifferent. Naturally, She was filled with an unattainable aura. She was high above, incomparable, holy and noble, and unparalleled in the world. The black-clothed man's face was originally full of anger, but it suddenly changed. His face was still angry, but it froze, and his eyes revealed a look of intoxication. He unconsciously stared at Zi Xiecheng, his mouth wide open, and saliva flowed out from the corners of his mouth. Chu Yang sighed in his heart. Damn it, I knew it would be like this. This guy was a martial monarch, and he was at least 100 years old. Seeing a beauty, he actually had such an expression. It could be seen that Zi Xiecheng's allure was unimaginable. Templar noticing that the black-robed man was looking at her rudely, Zi Xiecheng frowned unhappily. It was just a frown, but it was clear that he was not happy to see her looking at him like that. That was what it meant. The black-clothed man suddenly woke up with a start and let out an "ah." Suddenly, he was at a loss of what to do. His face actually turned red, and his two hands started grabbing and pinching here and there. He actually acted like an innocent young man who suddenly saw his dream lover. Even though Chu Yang was extremely depressed in his heart, he couldn't help but find it a little funny at this moment. Bro, you don't know, right? The woman in front of you is old enough to be your 18 generations of ancestors' great-grandmother. What's your name, miss? The black-clothed man had been silent for a long time, and finally managed to ask such a question. Chu Yang was depressed, but he still wanted to hold his belly and laugh out loud. You're already so old. Don't tell me you still want to pick up girls. Zi Xiecheng didn't say anything. She only looked at Chu Yang with her beautiful eyes. The black-clothed man suddenly woke up and turned to look at Chu Yang. The cruelty in his eyes was gone, and it was replaced by envy, jealousy, and hatred. Then, his whole face turned purple, as if he had a feud with Chu Yang for killing his father and stealing his wife. You little bastard! The black-clothed man shouted furiously, little bastard! You're actually so beautiful. You actually dared to trick me? This is intolerable. Today, I don't care which clan you're from. Since you've offended me, consider yourself unlucky. Chu Yang felt a little dizzy. How could he not understand that what this bastard really wanted to say was, you actually have such a beautiful wife? This is intolerable. But when the words reached his mouth, he changed his mind. Even if I have such a beautiful wife, it has nothing to do with you, right? Chu Yang looked at this impulsive old man with interest. What do you want? Only then did he suddenly realize that there was a lifelike orchid embroidered on the collar and cuffs of this black-clothed man. Someone from the Lan clan? Chu Yang was stunned. Isn't this the law enforcement interrogation hall? Why is he from the Lan clan? The black-clothed man said furiously, what do I want? Humph. If you kneel down obediently now and kowtow to me 3 times, I'll let you off. He said 2 sentences consecutively and suddenly said with a red face, let your woman apologize to me again and I'll spare your life. Towards the end, not only did he muster up the courage to say his true intentions, he even changed the way he addressed himself as old man to old man. Presumably, this martial monarch must have suddenly remembered that old man was not suitable for beautiful woman. Old man was more like it. Chu Yang looked at him worriedly. Even if you're blinded by beauty, you should be able to tell that the person standing in front of you is also a martial monarch who's not inferior to you, right? How could you say such brainless words? Little one, are you willing to listen to old man's judgment? The black-clothed man shouted angrily as he stole glances at Zi Xiecheng. Looking at her, he didn't care whether she was a martial monarch or a supreme martial artist. He was already distracted. Chu Yang sighed. I'm not willing. You're willing? That's good. What? You're saying that you're not willing? The black-clothed man was furious. You're asking for trouble. He actually rushed over in large strides with an aggressive aura. He actually wanted to fight. Chu Yang sighed gloomily and raised his right hand. With a clang, before Chu Yang's sword was out, the scabbard on the black-clothed man's waist suddenly shook violently. A shining long sword automatically came out of the scabbard and stood upright in the wind, shining with a cold light. The black-clothed man exclaimed, "Sword sovereign?" He suddenly stopped and felt that something wasn't right. He looked at Chu Yang carefully and his face finally darkened. "Sword sovereign? You're awake. Chu Yang looked at him with a half-smile. The black-clothed man took 2 steps back and looked a little conflicted. He knew clearly that he couldn't defeat a sword sovereign. Even if the other party was only a first-grade sword sovereign, with his strength, he might not be able to defeat him. But if he called for help, this peerless beauty, he wouldn't have a share. Especially that perverted 7th young master. He looked at Zi Sheqing reluctantly and sighed dejectedly. Suddenly, he looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. His voice carried a few strange syllables, which floated up into the sky. After all, his life was more important. Not long after he let out the howl, a gust of wind blew over. More than 10 people came from all directions. A calm and gloomy voice said, "What's the matter?" Then, there was a sudden sound, as if they were stunned. Then, there were many similar sounds. Obviously, these people were all stunned by Zi Sheqing's beauty when they saw her. Chu Yang looked over and saw 3 people on the left, 3 on the right, 3 behind him and 2 in front of him. Including the black-clothed man, there were exactly 12 people. Among them were martial monarchs. There were 4 people whose cultivation levels couldn't be determined. They must be martial saints. A young duke in a long brocade robe, holding a folding fan, stood tall and straight. He looked elegant and graceful. Beside this young duke, there was a man in his 30s. Just by standing there casually, he was already as unshakable as a high mountain. These people all had one thing in common. That was, there was a lifelike orchid embroidered on their collars and sleeves. Everyone looked at Zi Sheqing, unable to take their eyes off her. Ever since the young duke arrived, his peach blossom-like eyes were fixed on Zi Sheqing. The more he looked at her, the more passionate his gaze became. Suddenly, he laughed loudly. "Jiu Mu, you've done a great service for me this time. Ha ha ha. When I go back this time, I'll reward you handsomely." The black-clothed man's mouth twitched and he said, "Thank you, young master." That young man couldn't be bothered with him. He already walked towards Zi Sheqing impatiently. "Miss, I'm Lan Ruoyun from the Lan clan. May I know how to address you?" He only had eyes for this otherworldly beauty. He didn't even look at Chu Yang from the corner of his eyes. Chapter 9:18. Zi Sheqing said coldly, "What does it have to do with you how I address you?" As she said, she pulled Chula and walked behind Chu Yang. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that she had come to seek protection from a man after seeing that the other party was outnumbered. Chu Yang instantly rolled his eyes. Lan Ruoyun was obviously a member of the Lan clan, and from the looks of it, he was a male cousin of the Lan clan. Just one look at his expression and one could tell that this guy was a lecher. When such a person saw a beauty like Zi Sheqing, he was simply like a fly that saw honey. He would rather be smashed into pieces than to get close to her. Zi Sheqing was as cold as ice and frost. Her cold temperament that kept people 1,000 miles away made Lan Ruoyun even happier and more interested. It seemed that all men had a common problem. The more difficult it was to conquer a woman, the greater the sense of accomplishment. This was a common problem for all men, and this Ju clan was no exception. Out of the 12 people from the Lan clan, 11 of them were already dazzled. Only the man in his 30s standing beside Lan Ruoyun felt slightly uneasy. He also felt strange in his heart. There were only 1 man and 2 women in front of him, and only this man had some ability, but he was only a monarch-level martial artist. As for the 2 women, one was a little girl, and the other woman looked like she was only a zone-level martial artist. They were even weaker. But why did he have a feeling that a disaster was about to befall him? With his cultivation as a first-grade supreme martial artist, he shouldn't have such a feeling. 7th young master, in my opinion, it's better not to complicate matters. We'd better complete the law enforcement master's task as soon as possible and return to report. If the Yi clan and Zhuge clan are ahead of us, it'll be a great loss of face for the Lan clan. After pondering for a while, he finally trusted his intuition. Because his intuition had never lied to him. Lan Ruoyun waved his folding fan and looked at Zi Sheqing smilingly. As for Chu Yang, he was directly ignored by him. He said casually, "Grand Uncle Han, that matter isn't urgent. They haven't found it after searching for a few days. I don't believe that they will find it at this moment. Besides, The matter here is also very important. That grand uncle Han sighed and thought, what's so important about the matter here? It's just that you've belittled his wife. On the other side, Chu Yang thought to himself, so it wasn't the law enforcement officers who came out this time? Instead, it was that Lang Yilang who had mobilized the 3 super clans and gotten them to do the dirty work for him? If that was the case, would there still be people from the Yi clan and the Zhuge clan here? He wondered, who were the representatives of those 2 families? Little miss, you haven't heard of me, Lan Ruoyun, right? Lan Ruoyun smiled and said proudly, then you should have heard of Lan clan, right? As for the little girl beside you. He pointed at Chu Yang with his folding fan and said disdainfully, who does he think he is? Miss, if you follow me, I guarantee that you'll live a carefree and happy life. It's better than following this little 4 Cs and suffering all kinds of hardships. Zi Xieching said coldly, my fiancé is highly skilled in martial arts and is the number 1 among the younger generation. He is said to be invincible among experts of the same level. He is a great man with an indomitable spirit. You are just a young man from an aristocratic family. How can you be better than my fiancé? Fiancé? Just fiancé? Lan Ruoyun's eyes lit up instantly. Ha ha ha. Just fiancé is great. He tilted his head and said to Chu Yang, little girl, I'm not going to play games with you. In short, such a beauty is not someone you can handle. Get lost obediently. If I'm in a good mood, I'll spare your life. Seeing that he was surrounded by his own people, this young master actually tore off all his pretense and put on a posture of snatching. It was obvious that this young master wanted to snatch a girl by force. Chu Yang said coldly, whether she can handle it or not, still depends on the real skills. He was really not interested in talking to this bunch of lechers now. He might as well cut the Gordian knot. Let's fight. You actually want to fight? Lan Ruoyun laughed out loud, as if he had heard a great joke. He tilted his head and said lightly, who wants to fight with this invincible expert of the same level? A man in his 40s stepped forward and said calmly, Master Qigong, this young man's cultivation is not bad. Ordinary monarchs may not be able to take him down. Let me fight him. Lan Ruoyun grinned, revealing a cruel arc. He said in a low voice, kill. This man nodded heavily. He turned over and faced Chu Yang. He said lightly, young man, what's your name? Which clan are you from? Chu Yang said coldly, if I tell you which clan I'm from, will you not snatch my wife? What's the use of telling you? The man's eyes didn't move. He said, if you tell me now, there's still room for negotiation if we have a relationship. If you don't blame me for being merciless. Chu Yang laughed. Then be merciless. The man's eyes flickered. He said lightly, good, good, good. Suddenly, with a clang, he unsheathed his sword and pointed the tip of the sword forward. He said, I'm Guan Jiyu, the leader of the guards of the Lan clan. Don't forget my name on the road to the netherworld. Junior, you must remember, don't find a wife that's too beautiful. That's not a blessing in love, but a disaster. Chu Yang laughed mockingly. A small leader of the guards actually dares to call himself I. Guan Jiyu was furious. He leaped forward. Chu Yang didn't dare to be negligent. His eyes were cold and fierce. He shook his arms. A clang came from Guan Gu's sword. His sword, which was originally pointed forward, suddenly stood vertically at this moment. The tip of the sword pointed straight at the sky. Courtesy of the sword. Everyone behind him exclaimed in unison. Someone exclaimed, Guan Jiyu, be careful. This young man is actually a sword sovereign. The muscles on Guan Gu's face twitched. He didn't need anyone to remind him. At this moment, he also knew that he had encountered a hot potato. Sword energy rose from Chu Yang's body. It was as if a heavenly deity with thunderbolts all over his body was standing in front of him. At this moment, his body was like a sword, his eyebrows were like a sword and his eyes were like a sword. His whole person was like a peerless divine sword that was suddenly unsheathed. Beside Lan Ruoyun, that person sighed softly. A sword sovereign who's not even 20 years old. This time, he's really in big trouble. Lan Ruoyun raised his eyebrows and said, so what if he's a sword sovereign who's not even 20 years old? As long as we kill him, who will know about this matter? He knew what Grand Uncle Han meant, a sword sovereign who's not even 20 years old. The force behind him must be very terrifying. It wasn't that an ordinary force could nurture a sword sovereign who's not even 20 years old. Grand Uncle Han sighed. His gaze was solemn. Since this matter has started, we mustn't leave any future troubles behind. Seventh young master, you really have to change your bad habit of flirting with other women. Otherwise, sooner or later, you'll get into big trouble. Lan Ruoyun nodded and said, "Don't worry, Grand Uncle Han. As long as I get this girl, I'm afraid that I won't have any interest in other ordinary women." Grand Uncle Han looked at Zi Xieching attentively and nodded in agreement. This isn't a lie. With this girl's beauty, she's unparalleled in the whole heavens. Lan Ruoyun smiled and said, "After her fiancé dies, how can she, a weak girl, escape from my hands?" This Grand Uncle Han stared at the scene and said in a low voice, "Although this young man is a sword emperor, Guan Jiyu is already at the peak of the monarch grade. His cultivation has reached the saint grade. His realm is not there yet, but he can be called a half-saint. And this young man obviously hasn't reached the martial monarch level yet. If Guan Jiyu wants to kill him, it won't take much effort." Lan Ruoyun smiled excitedly. "Then quickly kill him. I can't wait. That little girl is really too tempting." As he said, he actually swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Grand Uncle Han nodded and didn't speak anymore. But that inexplicable feeling of suffocation in his heart still lingered. He was extremely puzzled. Why on earth would I have such a feeling in my heart? Except for me, there's obviously no other powerful expert here. This matter is too strange. On the other side, Zi Xieching's divine sense spread out silently. She said to Chu Yang via voice transmission, "Wei Wuyan has already found his teacher, but those people haven't found them yet. Don't worry and fight. Once there's a situation over there, I'll deal with it immediately. Don't worry, with me watching over them, they'll be fine." Chu Yang nodded and said via voice transmission, "Then you have to be careful." Zi Xieching revealed a confident smile. "I don't want anyone to die. In this world, no one can kill under my watch." "Very good, then I'll kill all these people first." Chu Yang snorted. It was one thing for a woman to be beautiful, and another thing for a man to appreciate a woman's beauty. But this kind of man who wanted to snatch other people's beautiful wives, no matter in his previous life or this life, Chu Yang would kill anyone he saw. After Lan Ruoyun said those words, even if it wasn't for the Dao state and cultivation, Chu Yang would definitely not let Lan Ruoyun off today. Letting such a villain off would really be letting his conscience down. Chu Yang laughed. He straightened his body and unsheathed his sword. At the moment when the sword was unsheathed, except for that person standing beside Lan Ruoyun, the other people's sword sheaths at their waists vibrated violently at the same time and let out a neat sword cry. With a touch of stunning sword light, the sword pierced out like flowing water. Guan Gu's pupils contracted. When Chu Yang's sword pierced over, he clearly felt that there was a sea in front of him. The huge waves of the sea were coming slowly from afar, but with the momentum of wind and thunder. Although it looked gentle, it carried a power that could sweep the world. Zi Xieching's eyes lit up. Chu Yang's soft water sword intent was already infinitely close to great success. His first move already carried the soft water sword intent. Chu Yang's eyes were calm and his face was calm. He silently recited a sentence in his heart. When your fighting spirit is as high as boiling and your vital energy and blood are as calm as ice and snow, then you'll be invincible in the whirl. Guan Gu's eyes turned cold and his sword went up to meet Chu Yang's attack. Chu Yang's sword was as soft as spring water and looked slow and sluggish, but Guan Gu's sword was as fast as lightning. Both of them drew their swords at the same time, but right in between them, when both of their arms were about to straighten, the two swords clash. The onlookers weren't mediocre. At this moment, all of them could tell, the two swords that looked fast and slow were actually equally fast. When the two swords clashed, they actually stagnated for a while and strangely didn't make any sound at all. The next moment, with a flash of Chu Yang's black clothes, the soft water sword intent suddenly erupted and turned into raging wave. Chapter 919. Countless sword auras were sent out at the same time. Like soft water plants and vines, they danced and twined gently, pouncing on Guan Gu's sword auras. And Chu Yang himself retreated lightly as if he was weightless. He retreated 100 feet. Zi Sheqing's eyes lit up. Chu Yang had actually entered the Dao state in such a short period of time. This was the best way to deal with the current situation. The opponent was obviously trying to break Chu Yang's soft water-like sword intent forcefully with his tyrannical strength. Chu Yang retreated now. The sword aura was still there, but the opponent couldn't attack him anymore. But from this point, it could be seen that Chu Yang didn't want to fight for a long time. The opponent had too many people and too many experts. If Chu Yang wanted to kill someone, he had to create an opportunity for the expert beside Lan Ruoyun to not be able to save him in time. Guan Gu's long sword slashed left and right. The audience could actually see the green sword aura drifting in all directions. Grand Uncle Han frowned. My sword technique is too weird. How did Guan Jiyu fall into a passive state at the first encounter? The situation is a little bad. As he said, he took a small step forward. At this moment, Guan Jiyu broke free from Chu Yang's sword aura. He suddenly raised his arm and pierced forward. His sword turned into flowing light. The man and the sword became a straight line at this moment, parallel to the ground. At this moment, the long sword pierced the air in front of him and made a boom sound. This sword strike actually produced a sonic boom, wind-snatching sword. Grand Uncle Han frowned even more. This is Guan Gu's desperate move. He actually used it at the second move. Guan Jiyu was already a little angry. He came out full of confidence and promised solemnly. But he was forced into a disadvantageous position by the opponent at the first move. And that entangled sword aura made him feel a little suffocated and uncomfortable. Facing the opponent, he even felt a little scared. The opponent is just a 5th stage sword sovereign. How can he make me feel scared? Guan Jiyu was furious. He directly launched his most powerful move without hesitation. He wanted to kill the opponent in front of him with one move. Chu Yang's retreating momentum had stopped. At this moment, facing the opponent's lightning-like sword, he actually rose into the air as well. He and his sword formed a straight line in the air, parallel to the ground. His sword flashed as he shot through the air. Both Guan Jiyu and Chu Yang did the same. The spectators couldn't help but cry out in surprise when they saw this. This was clearly a suicidal move. Could it be that this was only the second move, and they were going to perish together, exchanging a life for a life? Based on their current distance and sword momentum, it was already impossible for them to change their moves. There was only one result in such a duel. You stab your sword into my head, and I stab my sword into your head. There would never be a second outcome. Lan Ruoyun also exclaimed. Then, a hint of viciousness appeared in his eyes. It's good that Guan Jiyu died together with this little guy. Anyway, no matter what, if this little guy dies, I'll just get that woman into my bed. Who cares who dies? The two swords faced each other head-on. Cold light flickered, and both of them had calm gazes. Guan Gu's hair fluttered behind him, and his clothes rustled. His whole person was like a javelin flying at high speed. Chu Yang's gaze was cold, and his expression was calm. At this moment, his fighting spirit was boiling, and his killing intent was surging. However, his heart was as still as ice. In the land of Dao, this was the first time that he had reached such a sword state. His whole body was filled with an indescribable cold killing intent. This person must be killed. Not only him, Chu Yang wouldn't let any of these people who were present today off if he could kill them. Young Thug was lecherous, and only lecherous. After all, everyone was lecherous. After seeing a beautiful woman, who wouldn't want to take a few more glances? But the reason why he developed into possession and snatching by force had a lot to do with these evil slave. If these people didn't add fuel to the fire, how could a young man become a young thug on his own, no matter how evil his nature was? Seeing that Lan Ruoyun didn't hold back in front of these people and directly snatched a woman, Chu Yang knew that these people were already used to such things. He didn't know how many times these bastards had helped Lan Ruoyun. Therefore, Lan Ruoyun didn't hold back in front of them and was unscrupulous. So many loving couples who should have grown old together were ruined in the hands of these bastards. Young thugs should be killed. These accomplices should be killed even more. The killing intent in Chu Yang's heart was even stronger. Seeing that the two swords were about to cross each other and pierce into each other's head, both parties didn't have the intention to change their moves. At this moment, even if they wanted to, it was already too late. Everyone couldn't help but hold their breath. They stared with their eyes wide open, as if blood would splatter in the next moment. Guan Gu's eyes finally revealed a trace of regret and panic. In his opinion, this young man opposite him was just bluffing. After all, not everyone didn't want to live. Besides, this young man had such a peerless beauty beside him, all the more he wouldn't want to die. This battle was nothing more than a competition of courage. Whoever could persist till the end would win. Therefore, he didn't dodge and directly thrust his sword forward. But until the moment of contact, the other party was actually even calmer than him. He was even more unafraid of death than him. This made Guan Gu's mind in a mess. Damn it, you're fucking serious with me. At this moment, Guan Jiyu shouted in his heart. I'm finished, I'm finished. This time, I'm going to die with you. But I've just used my wind-snatching sword and only used one move. I've lost big time. Others couldn't see the change in Guan Gu's expression, but how could Chu Yang, who was facing her, not see it? Chu Yang's eyes revealed a trace of mockery. A sword tip flashed with cold light and magnified infinitely in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang, who was in the Dao state, had already accurately captured the trajectory of the other party's sword and the direction of the sword tip. The next moment, ding! A soft sound froze everyone's nerves at this moment. All the spectators, including the supreme martial artist beside Lan Ruoyun, were dumbfounded. They almost couldn't believe their eyes. Just in midair, the scene seemed to have been frozen. Two swords, sword tip against sword tip, actually froze in midair. How big was the sword tip? The sword tip of a sword was definitely comparable to the tip of a needle, even to the extent that this kind of divine sword that had been through hundreds of battles and drank blood, the sword tip was even smaller than the tip of a needle. However, such a smiling existence, in such a rapid battle, under such a terrifying speed, the two swords actually miraculously froze in midair. Not only did the sword tip meet the sword tip, but it also made a sound that clearly passed into everyone's ears. This showed how much strength both parties used in the battle. Guan Jiyu felt relieved. He only felt sweat drenching his clothes. He immediately decided, I'll never risk my life to fight with this crazy little guy again. He's really too scary. This time, it's really, really pure luck. As long as I fall from midair, I'll immediately use my wind-snatching sword and chop this little guy into minced meat at the fastest speed. Damn it, I'm scared to death. However, the next moment, Guan Gu's relieved eyes suddenly turned into fear, despair, and disbelief, because the sword tip of Chu Yang's sword actually emitted a strange force. Immediately, Guan Jiyu realized that this sword that had accompanied him for his whole life was suddenly cut apart by the other party's sword, just like a fresh bamboo that was cut apart by the other party's sword. Guan Gu's sword was cut into two pieces with a swoosh. With a swoosh, it reached the sword hilt, and the other party's sword rushed in between the two pieces of sword. The phrase "like a hot knife through butter" was absolutely appropriate here. The long sword cut open the tip of Guan Gu's sword, the edge of Guan Gu's sword, and the hilt of Guan Gu's sword. It pierced into Guan Gu's arm like a lightning bolt. With a bang, Guan Gu's arm exploded like a piece of bamboo. The next moment, swoosh, a soft sound. Chu Yang's long sword had already pierced into Guan Gu's forehead, through his skull and deep into his brain. At this moment, the sword energy burst out from the sword tip like a raging wave. The sword tip continued to move forward, and a cold light appeared at the back of Guan Gu's head. It was stained with blood, dripping and shining. With a swoosh, Chu Yang sheathed his sword. He somersaulted in midair and kicked Guan Gu's head. Guan Gu's body flew out like a broken sack. His black clothes fluttered as he flew back in midair. Only then did a stream of blood spurt out from Guan Gu's forehead, as if to attack Chu Yang. However, as Chu Yang retreated, the blood could not reach Chu Yang at all. Chu Yang landed on the ground, and the stream of blood that spurted out also landed on the ground. It was 1 foot away from Chu Yang's feet. Guan Gu's body retreated straight back in the air, following the trajectory that he had just flown in. His body was flat, and blood spurted out from his forehead and the back of his head at the same time. It was as if two blood fountains had suddenly appeared in the air. Guan Jiyu had lost all consciousness. At that moment, Chu Yang, while he was still in shock, the sword energy exploded in his mind, and instantly collapsed along his meridians, destroying his dantian. All of his life force, all of his consciousness, all of his divine will, were completely and utterly destroyed at that moment. From escaping death to complete death, Guan Jiyu did not even have time to moan or say a word. Poof! Guan Gu's body flew back and fell on the ground softly. He did not even twitch, and he was already silent. Everyone in the Lan clan was dumbfounded. Looking at Guan Gu's corpse, their minds were blank. There were too many unexpected things. No one had expected that things would turn out like this. Firstly, no one had expected that the two parties would stab each other. Secondly, it was even more unexpected that the sword tips would touch each other. Then, Guan Gu's sword would suddenly split open, and the other party would seize the opportunity to kill him. This was even more unbelievable and ridiculous. However, the appearance of these three factors had caused the death of a half-martial saint. Killing a half-martial saint with 2 moves. This black-clothed youth who looked so handsome and confident was actually so ruthless in his actions. After a while, everyone's gaze lifted up from Guan Gu's corpse and looked at Chu Yang. Their gazes had already changed. "Young man, you're quite capable. I also quite like the sword in your hand." Lan Ruoyun smiled. Without even looking at Guan Gu's corpse, he said directly to Chu Yang, "Your sword, what kind of sword is it? Leave the sword and the woman behind, and you can leave. I won't pursue the matter of you killing my subordinate." Chapter 920. At such a time, he actually started to care about Chu Yang's sword. Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This guy's eyesight is not bad. He can actually tell that my sword is not an ordinary one. Chu Yang said coldly, "My sword is only used to kill people. I will never give it away. If you kill me, the sword is yours, and so is the woman. But if you can't kill me, the sword is not yours, the woman is not yours, and your life is not yours." Lan Ruoyun snorted and shouted, "Who's going to kill him for me?" At the side, Grand Uncle Han said in a low voice, "Fifth Jin, you go." A burly man came out. He was holding a purple gold saber. He looked at Chu Yang and said, "Little one, you're an evil slave." Chu Yang interrupted. Fifth Jin's face changed instantly. You're an evil slave." Chu Yang raised his sword and said, "Come up and die. I'm not interested in hearing your name." Fifth Jin roared and rushed up with his saber. Chu Yang smiled and went up with his sword. The two of them were entangled together instantly. "Grand Uncle Han, you should be able to take down Fifth Jin, right?" Lan Ruoyun looked at Zi Sheqing, who was standing quietly in the distance, as if this matter had nothing to do with her. His eyes were already a little red. He was thinking about what he would do after he got her. As he thought of this, he had already set up a tent under his crotch. Fifth Jin is a second-grade martial saint. It's a piece of cake for him to take down this little one. Grand Uncle Han said faintly, "Except for the 2 Jin brothers and me, the rest of the people here will only die if they go up." That's good, Lan Ruoyun said joyfully. "But, 7th young master, even if this young man dies in our hands, this matter must not be spread out. Once it's leaked out, it'll definitely be a huge disaster." Grand Uncle Han warned worriedly, to be able to cultivate such a person, he must be a reclusive high-level supreme martial artist. If the other party comes to find us, then, even the Lan clan will be in chaos. We can't protect you." Lan Ruoyun said disapprovingly, "No matter how powerful he is, can he be stronger than a heaven-layer great clan?" Grand Uncle Han sighed and didn't say anything. He thought, "You are so ignorant. In this layer of heaven, there are many people that the big clans are afraid of. Let's take the most obvious example. Ning Tianya, Bu Liuqing, Yu Lingxue, Feng Yuro. Any big clan that offended any one of these 4 would face a devastating disaster." In the arena, the battle between the two was getting more and more intense. At the side of the arena, Zi Xieching's two small hands were hidden in her sleeves as she made mysterious gestures. Waves of Tao state aura, which were hard to see with the naked eye, flowed into her palms from the battlefield like rivers flowing into the sea. Now, her control was more delicate and cautious than when she was in the Black Blood Forest. All the Tao state energy was controlled by her invisibly, and not a single bit leaked out. In this way, only Zi Xieching and Chu Yang himself knew that Chu Yang had entered the Tao state. Others couldn't detect it at all. Even this first-grade supreme martial artist, who was standing beside Lan Ruoyun, couldn't detect the real background of this young sword emperor in front of him. Thus, he kept making wrong decisions, which allowed Chu Yang to achieve the greatest training effect. Chu Yang was already in a tough battle. This fifth Jin was a true second-grade martial saint expert. Once the battle started, Chu Yang felt the pressure as if a mountain was pressing down on him. The other party's purple-gold saber was like a wild dragon that overturned rivers and seas. It was powerful and heavy, and every slash carried with it the sound of wind and thunder. Moreover, although the other party was tall and burly, his body movements were extremely agile. His body moved with the saber, and he became one with the saber. Purely based on the degree of proficiency, among all the people that Chu Yang had met, only Dong Wushang could be compared with this person in terms of proficiency in saber techniques. But in terms of combat power, Dong Wushang was far behind fifth Jin. Once the battle started, Chu Yang was in a disadvantageous position. But as his spirit entered the Tao state in the next moment, it became more daunting than dangerous. In the Tao state, the other party's saber attacks were all traceable and could be seen clearly. Although Chu Yang was still in a disadvantageous position, his life was definitely not in danger. He concentrated on using the soft water sword intent, and fought steadily and surely. While the soft water sword intent that borrowed strength to fight strength was protecting himself, it was also slowly, thread by thread, causing the opponent to be entangled with a force. The battle was in a stalemate. Chu Yang's comprehension was also getting deeper and deeper. He even comprehended the saber state at one point in time from the other party's saber light. Although the pressure that fifth Jin gave him was great, compared to Zi Xieching, it was like heaven and earth. Chu Yang had been fighting with Zi Xieching every day these few days, and he was already used to fighting under such great pressure. At this moment, although he was in a disadvantageous position, he was actually able to cope with it with ease. Although the battle with Zi Xieching was intense and stressful, Chu Yang himself knew that his life was not in danger, so he didn't have any scruples. But the thing that could really push people to improve was always fear. Only when extreme fear was used as pressure could one make the most terrifying outburst. This kind of fear included the fear of death and the fear of loss. So, to Chu Yang, this moment of life and death crisis was the real experience, the experience of life and death, and the so-called martial world experience and battle experience that could be engraved in one's bones could only be formed in such a battle of life and death. Chu Yang's sword was like soft water, rippling gently, while fifth Jin's saber was like a huge mountain, smashing into the sea fiercely. Although the sea was passively bearing it, and the mountain could cause huge waves when it smashed into the sea, it would still be calm after that. But the mountain would sink to the bottom of the sea and wouldn't be of any use here. Under such circumstances, the battle between the two of them continued in a cycle. Chu Yang kept changing his body movements, from the fleeting snow cloud steps of Beyond the Heavens sect to the spectral steps of the first-generation sword master of the Calamity Sword, and then to the ghost steps, heavenly star steps, 7 steps to heaven that the sword spirit had taught him. He had already switched between 30 to 40 different types of footwork. Sometimes it was gentle, sometimes it was ethereal, sometimes it was strange, sometimes it was illusory. In short, although fifth Jin had the upper hand in all aspects, the feeling of having nowhere to exert his strength made him, the person who had the upper hand, feel extremely aggrieved. Because from the start of the battle until now, the weapons of both parties had only clashed dozens of times, and from then on, they had never clashed again. What kind of feeling was this? Every strike of the saber struck the void with great force. Time passed bit by bit. Grand Uncle Han, who was standing beside Lan Ruoyun, slowly felt that something was wrong. This was because Chu Yang's sword momentum had changed. The originally calm sea was now slightly surging with waves. It was as if there was a wind blowing across the sea surface, and the waves were sparkling. Grand Uncle Han suddenly realized that the battle situation was quietly changing. Fifth Jin's original attack had now become 80%. The opponent had started to counterattack. Just when Grand Uncle Han realized this, Chu Yang's sword momentum changed again. Waves started to appear on the sparkling sea, like a layer of silver waves rolling over from the sky. Fifth Jin's saber was already a little sluggish. Chu Yang had already changed from 10% attack to 30% attack. Grand Uncle Han's fingers touched his beard lightly, and he looked worried. Did the opponent do this deliberately? Or was he at the end of his rope? Just when he was hesitating, Chu Yang's sword momentum changed again. The sword moves were like waves rolling up, and the speed became faster and faster, surging forward one after another. Fifth Jin was forced to withdraw his saber. He first defended, then attacked. 55. The situation was actually equalized by Chu Yang in an instant. This miraculous reversal left all the spectators dumbfounded. Excluding Grand Uncle Han, Fifth Jin's strength was second only to his big brother, Fourth Jin, and he was definitely ranked second. Second stage martial saint. In the martial world, he was already close to a legendary existence. But at this moment, after fighting with a young man for 2 hours, he was actually able to attack and defend with the opponent. This was simply unbelievable. Where did such a monstrous young man come from? But at this moment, when everyone saw that it was a 50-50 situation, the situation on the battlefield suddenly changed drastically. Chu Yang let out a long roar. His long sword shook violently, and he shouted, "Heavenly thunder, transform into my wild waves." The sword light suddenly spread out with a buzzing sound. The waves in the sea suddenly surged up to the sky, and the wind and clouds surged. The water was so strong that it seemed to be connected with the sky. Streaks of sword light shone in such waves, as if they were connected with the heaven and the earth. It was as if the thunderbolts in the sky had descended from the sky at this moment, cheering for the wind and wave. The huge wind and waves completely drowned Fifth Jin. Just a moment ago, the two sides were still 55. But at this moment, Fifth Jin didn't even have half a chance to attack, and was only left with pure defense. Yes, defense. Because even if he defended, he might not be able to defend. The soft water sword intent that Chu Yang had set up from the start was densely packed layer by layer. Although Fifth Jin had cut them all off, they didn't disappear. At this moment, with the guidance of Chu Yang's sword momentum, the soft water sword intent that had been scattered for 100 years were all gathered together again. A simple sword intent couldn't affect Fifth Jin's saber technique. But the soft water sword intent that Chu Yang had set up from the start had accumulated more than 10 million sword intents. Now that they were all gathered together, their power was already terrifying. Hundreds of rivers converged into the sea, forming a huge pulling force. Fifth Jin's saber started to deviate from its direction. No matter how hard he tried, even if his face turned red, the saber that was supposed to be facing the front would always deviate a little. In a battle between experts, a slight difference could lead to a huge difference. Fifth Jin had no power to turn the situation around. He could only hold on bitterly. With a few swishing sounds, blood spurted out from Fifth Jin's body. He roared loudly and waved his saber with all his might. Fourth Jin, save your brother. Grand Uncle Han wanted to do it himself, but he respected his status and ordered Fourth Jin to do it. But it was too late. Thank you to Long Yinyu for the 400,000 PRO Hong today. Congratulations to Alliance Master Long for becoming the Grand Alliance Master. Thank you to Roaming Dragon 99999 Alliance Master PRO Hong for the tip. Thank you for becoming the Grand Alliance Master. I've always seen you vote, but never enter the group. Thank you to Roaming Dragon 99999 Alliance Master for the continuous support from Evil Monarch to Grand Alliance Master. Thank you. Thank you to Slight Clear Sorrow Alliance Master PRO Hong for the tip. Thank you for becoming the Grand Alliance Master. Thank you to Red Dust Trouble Alliance Master PRO Hong. I've received PRO Hong many times this month. Thank you for your support. Thank you to I'm Bookmaniac 6, Shui Linglong, Who Will the Windflower Fall, battle-breaking azure dragon bear. There are too many people to list them all. I'll organize them into a book of thanks. Thank you all. Chapter 921. If Granduncle Han took action personally without hesitation, he could still save 5th Jin's life. But he ordered 4th Jin to take action. It would take time for Daojin Sai to hear the order and execute it. If it was a normal battle, this little bit of time wouldn't affect the overall situation at all. But under Chu Yang's sword, this little bit of time was enough to kill, because the sword light had already converged into a raging sea. The entire sea had been netted, and 5th Jin was struggling at death's door in this sea of sword light and raging sword energy. Just when 4th Jin jumped out with a roar, he also heard the last scream of his younger brother. I'm not resigned to this. Chu Yang's sword was like the wind, flicking away the purple gold saber. The tip of the sword flashed, and one of 5th Jin's eyeballs flew out. With another flash, black water flowed out from the other eye. Then, Chu Yang guided the sword, and all the sword energy instantly gathered together and slashed down violently. Then, the waves of sword light could be seen as blood continuously flew up. Pieces of flesh and blood flew up into the air, and pieces of bone splashed out. Chu Yang kept his sword and retreated. He was panting, and his face was already pale. But although he had already retreated, the raging sword light waves didn't disappear. Instead, they were still slashing fiercely. 4th Jin rushed in with a roar, and slashed the sword energy crazily. When he rushed in, he couldn't help but let out a loud scream, "Brother!" The raging sword light waves dispersed, and 4th Jin was seen standing there, holding his brother and roaring towards the sky. He roared towards the sky. Above the heads of the two brothers, countless pieces of flesh and blood fell like a rain of blood, drifting down. It fell on their bodies and faces. 4th Jin howled towards the sky. His voice was shrill, and tears rolled down his cheeks. Then, he carried his brother's corpse with one hand and strode towards Chu Yang, roaring angrily, Little. You killed my brother. You actually dared to kill my brother. You actually dared to. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to tear you apart." It was only when he walked and swung his arm that everyone noticed 5th Jin's appearance. They couldn't help but gasp. 5th Jin, who was in his hand, didn't have any flesh on his body. Even his internal organs had been dug out. He carried his brother's corpse as he walked, and his right hand was actually holding the skeleton's spine. All that was left of his body were white bones. There wasn't even a trace of blood on his body. His entire body was like a skeleton that had been buried in the ground for hundreds of years. There was not a single bit of flesh left. It was clean. Chu Yang's face was pale. He said coldly, "So what if I killed your brother? If you want to die, I will fulfill your wish." Fourth Jin looked up to the sky and roared, his eyes completely red, "Come here, little bastard. Let me kill you." At this moment, a soft voice said, "Chu Yang, you can't fight anymore. If he continued to fight, his body would be damaged. Leave these people to me." Chu Yang turned around and smiled. He said, "Okay." The one who spoke was Zi Sheqing. Chu Yang had fought 2 battles in a row, and his physical strength had long been overdrawn. How could he continue fighting at this moment? Zi Sheqing knew about this, Chu Yang knew about it, and even the remaining 10 people on the other side knew about it. It could also be seen that this young man's sword emperor was already at the end of his tether. Zi Sheqing's white dress fluttered, and she stood in front of Chu Yang in a flash. She blocked Chu Yang. Chu Yang smiled and turned around without any worry. He strode towards Chu Le-er's position and sat down, panting heavily. Chu Le-er massaged his shoulders and his chest, feeling sorry for him. "Big brother, I feel that something is not right." Chu Le-er said carefully, "This Sister Z is obviously very powerful, but you have to stand in front of her and be her shield for everything. This makes me feel very uncomfortable." Chu Yang smiled and pinched her little nose. "Little girl, you can also tell this." After a pause, he said, "Don't you know that he wants me to enter the Tao state during the battle to collect the power of the Tao state?" "No." Chu Le-er shook her head and shook Chu Yang's hand off her little nose. "I don't think it's so simple." "Of course it's not so simple." Chu Yang smiled and said, "But overall, this matter is beneficial to me. Because under her supervision, I want to achieve my own goals and achieve my life's goal. So now, her background is a little unclear, and she is indeed using me as her shield. But, there's one thing that you haven't thought about. With her strength, she doesn't need any shield at all." Chu Le-er thought and immediately understood. Actually, this matter was just a roundabout problem. You only saw what was in front of you, and seemed to only see Chu Yang fighting for others. No matter what, he would stand up for others. So you felt that it was unfair. But thinking about it, with Zi Sheqing's strength, did she need anyone to stand up for her? Did she need any protectors? That was not necessary at all. Not to mention a few playboys and perverts. Even if a peak supreme martial artist came, what could he do? With the current Zi Sheqing, even if Ning Tianya and Bu Liuqing wanted to stand up for her, she probably wouldn't care. Like what Chu Yang said, now that Chu Yang stood up for her, it wasn't that she was using Chu Yang, but that Chu Yang was actually using her. He would make use of these fierce battles to improve his own cultivation. He would use these battles to solidify his soul. Using these endless battles to push his cultivation up step by step to get closer to his goal. Because Chu Yang's goal was to consolidate the heavens without using the Calamity Sword. To protect his brothers. Such a goal, if there wasn't a strong pressure urging him from behind, and just relying on Chu Yang's own hard work, he might not be able to achieve it even in 10,000 years. But with Zi Sheqing, it was very different. Because Zi Sheqing would always spur him to find different opponents for him to fight, and then improve during the battles. Even if there were no enemies, Zi Sheqing still wanted to fight with him. This imperceptibly increased Chu Yang's cultivation by 100 times compared to his original cultivation. And the most impressive thing was, once he met an enemy that he couldn't fight against, Zi Sheqing would definitely not watch him die. Because once he died, she wouldn't be able to find a second person like him who could continuously provide her with the power of the Tao state. So this was equivalent to a super bodyguard. Chu Yang felt a little strange. Unlimited benefits were in front of him, but why did this little girl Le-er only see him being used by others? At this moment, looking at the slim and graceful Zi Sheqing in front of him, Fourth Jin was already stunned. Not only was he stunned, even Lan Ruoyun and the rest were stunned. This delicate beauty actually went to fight. With such small arms and legs, she would fall down with a breath. What kind of battle power could she have? Only Grand Uncle Han, who was standing beside Lan Ruoyun, had a doubtful and serious look on his face at this moment. How did this girl appear in front of that young man? Why didn't I see it clearly? She obviously didn't blink just now. Could it be that this delicate and timid girl is actually a peerless expert? Grand Uncle Han frowned and pondered in his heart. But he didn't notice that Lan Ruoyun, who was beside him, had already approached Zi Sheqing lecherously the moment he saw her coming out. This Grand Uncle Han originally wanted to stop him, but he suddenly thought, if she's really a peerless expert, why didn't she flare up when she was teased by the 7th young master just now? So, he gave up the thought of stopping him. Ha ha ha. Beauty, you're not joking, right? Lan Ruoyun swaggered over with an obscene smile all over his face. He said with a salivating face, why don't you fight with me? Let them all go, and we can fight alone. I'll fight with you however you want. Do you want to fight on the bed? Or fight here? Or fight in the water? If there's really no other way, fight on the tree? Ha ha ha. How about it? Zi Sheqing's eyes were cold. Suddenly, she looked at Lan Ruoyun without any expression. Suddenly, she smiled slightly and said, just you? Even your ancestors from 10,000 years ago didn't dare to talk to me like this. Your Lan clan is really bold. Suddenly, she stretched out her hand. Just as her fair hand appeared in the air, it was as if an orchid in an empty valley had suddenly bloomed, giving off a strong fragrance. Looking at this small hand, Lan Ruoyun was instantly distracted. He smiled obscenely and said, your small hand is so white, I wonder if it's soft. He stretched out his hand, wanting to touch it. Right at this moment, a strange woo tilde tilde sound suddenly rang out in the air. Lan Ruoyun, who had just stretched out his hand, was a full 20 feet away from Zi Sheqing, but he seemed to be sucked over and flew over without his feet touching the ground. Zi Sheqing's small hand, which was as soft as water and as tender as spring onions, seemed to have become a deadly sharp claw at this moment. It clasped onto Lan Ruoyun's head like an iron clamp. Kneel down. Zi Sheqing's face was cold and indifferent as she said softly. With a slight force, Lan Ruoyun couldn't help but kneel down stiffly. Just like a rotten wooden stake. This unforeseen event gave everyone a huge shock. Grand Uncle Han flew over. Looking at Zi Sheqing's eyes, he was actually a little shocked. He said, Miss, my young master is young and insensible. He has offended you. Please spare him this time on account of the Lan clan. After a pause, he continued, as long as you're willing to let go, we'll leave immediately. We won't dare to pester you anymore. Once an expert made a move, it would be obvious whether he was skilled or not. Zi Sheqing just stretched out her hand and sucked Lan Ruoyun, who was 20 feet away, into her hand. Grand Uncle Han instantly knew that the power of this woman was probably not below his own. He couldn't help but feel bitter in his heart. His intuition was indeed right. He had indeed gotten himself into big trouble. Just by looking at the way she grabbed him, he knew that this matter was difficult to handle. Their only hope was to see if the name of the Lan clan was enough to intimidate the other party. 7th young master was under her control. As long as she wanted to kill him, she could do so easily. He definitely wouldn't be able to save him in time. Besides, even if it was a head-on battle, he also had no confidence in facing this woman. Lan Ruoyun, who was kneeling stiffly under Zi Sheqing's control, was even more in disbelief. His face was full of shock and disbelief. Even in his dreams, he didn't expect that this peerless beauty, whom he had been thinking of bringing home to ravage, would actually turn into such a terrifying demon. This was really. What exactly was going on? Lan Ruoyun wanted to cry. Zi Sheqing smiled. Lan clan? Grand Uncle Han nodded. Yes. Zi Sheqing smiled gently. Lan clan, you're actually using the Lan clan to suppress me. Ha ha ha, but, what is the Lan clan? Today's update. My monthly votes are now 6,126. I've released the update of 6,170 in advance. Looks like I won't be able to release 10 chapters. I'm also relieved. I'm really exhausted. Chapter 922. Book 7. What crime should be meted out? First update. Grand Uncle Han's expression changed drastically. He looked at Zi Sheqing with hostility and wariness. Marshal Yin Yang. What was the Lan clan? This sentence was taboo in the heavens. Very few people dared to say this. Even the experts from the other big clans didn't dare to say this. This sentence had almost never appeared in this continent. But it finally appeared today. These words came out of the mouth of a beautiful woman with boundless contempt and disdain. Lan Ruoyun's face turned ashen after hearing this sentence. Since this woman didn't put the Lan clan in her eyes, wouldn't it mean that he would definitely die if he fell into her hands today? Grand Uncle Han said with difficulty, "Who exactly are you? Do you have any connections with the Lan clan?" Zi Sheqing shook her head lightly. "No." Grand Uncle Han forced a smile. "We're all people of the pugilistic world. We see each other all the time. As the saying goes, it's impossible for two mountains to meet again, but two people will eventually meet. With your cultivation, you should have boundless magnanimity. Why do you mind such a small misunderstanding from the younger generation? Just raise your hand and this matter will be over. The Lan clan will be forever grateful. Isn't it better to be friends than enemies?" Zi Sheqing laughed. "If I didn't have such cultivation today, would this misunderstanding still be a misunderstanding?" Grand Uncle Han was speechless. If you didn't have such cultivation, you would have already been taken to bed by the seventh young master and played with as you like. What misunderstanding would there still be? But of course, this sentence couldn't be said out loud. At this point, there was really no need to continue. Grand Uncle Han took a deep breath. His eyes turned cold and he said, "Since this is the case, please let go of the seventh young master and have a fair fight with me. According to the rules of the pugilistic world, the winner is the king. We can do whatever we want. How about that?" He puffed up his chest and a surge of battle intent gushed out like a tide. But he felt helpless in his heart. The opponent's cultivation was unfathomable. He could only use such means to let the seventh young master out of danger first, but he himself would be in danger. He didn't even know if the opponent would agree. Net 724 * continuous updates pure text novel, Zi Sheqing chuckled. "You want him to escape first?" Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly shouted, "How dare you!" As she spoke, Fourth Jin had already circled behind her. The distance between them wasn't very far, and he suddenly launched an attack. The purple gold saber, which was exactly the same as his brother's, emitted a dazzling saber radiance that was more than 20 feet long and shot towards Zi Sheqing. This strike fully displayed Fourth Jin's saint-level power. Even Fourth Jin, who unleashed this strike, thought in his heart, this strike was truly the best strike that he could unleash under such immense pressure, be it in terms of realm, power, saber style, or saber force. They were all natural and invulnerable. When this saber was slashed out, Fourth Jin could even faintly hear the call of the great Tao, the sound of wind and thunder. His younger brother had died tragically right before his eyes, and he wanted to avenge his younger brother, yet he was obstructed by this unpredictable enemy. Boundless grief, indignation, and anger transformed into combat strength, battle intent, and a saber strike. This saber strike actually seemed to break through the bottleneck of Fourth Jin's saber skills. Fourth Jin was very confident that he could unleash this saber strike that was full of saint-level comprehension. This was an opportunity. As long as he had this saber strike and focused on cultivation, he would be able to advance by another level in less than a year. This was the true saber skill of a saber saint. The saber radiance left the body and turned into a dragon. A saber strike piercing through the heavens. This was the power of a heavenly saint. Life and death grip. When this saber strike was unleashed, the enemy's life and death would definitely be in his hand. Although it was a pity to kill such a great beauty, but the arrow was already on the bow, and he had no choice but to release it. Grand Uncle Han was overjoyed. Fourth Jin's saber strike was powerful, ingenious, and just right. Even a supreme martial artist couldn't be indifferent to this saber strike, but as long as the other party reacted, he would be able to snatch the seventh young master back from her hands immediately. However, What happened next made the illusion in Grand Uncle Han's heart burst like a bubble, and his entire body turned cold. Xi Xieching's face was cold. She didn't turn back, but her snow-white left hand suddenly grabbed backward. Net. Her hand gesture even seemed very gentle. The whole sky seemed to darken suddenly. The earth and the sky also seemed to tremble at this moment. The delicate palm and the saber radiance collided. The palm was white and petite, like a blooming orchid. The saber was like lightning, powerful and domineering. The saber radiance was golden and exuded an insufferably murderous aura, with the comprehension of the martial saint level. One was fast and one was slow, one was big and one was small. One was like the collapse of the heavens, while the other was like the gentle ripples of spring water. But Fifth Jin's saber strike, which was far more powerful than lightning and thunder, was actually grabbed by her fair and tender palm. She grabbed that brilliant saber radiance with one hand. That formless saber gleam was actually grabbed by her as if she was grabbing a snake, holding it in midair. The saber radiance was 20 feet long, and what she grabbed was close to 1/3 of the top. This was the place where the force was the most powerful, and it was actually held in midair by her in such an unimaginable way. Fourth Jin, who was 1.5 feet away, maintained the posture of holding the saber with both hands. He stood there, unable to move. What she grabbed was the saber radiance, not the actual body of his saber. But his saber seemed to have met with an invisible and powerful obstruction in the air. He couldn't slash downwards, nor could he retract his saber. It was frozen in mid-air. At this moment, Xi Xieching still didn't turn around. She didn't even turn her shoulders. Her right hand was still clasped on Lan Ruoyun's skull, and her eyes were still looking straight ahead, looking at Grand Uncle Han indifferently. But her left hand had already completely shattered, grabbed and controlled the Saber Saint's saber. Fourth Jin almost couldn't believe what he was seeing with his eyes. The saber that was as powerful as lightning was actually grabbed like this. But then, he felt that something was wrong. With a loud roar, his elemental force gushed out like a tidal wave. He was about to abandon the saber and retreat by himself to escape. But he suddenly realized that the essential chi gushing out from his energy center and into his saber body disappeared without a trace. There was no reaction at all. He wanted to throw the saber away, but at this moment, there was an invisible suction force on the saber, which stuck his palm firmly onto it. He actually couldn't throw it away. Not only couldn't he throw it away, but his body also couldn't move as his elemental force gushed out. Fourth Jin was horrified. The other party, this woman, what exactly is her cultivation? She can actually control me like this. Just as he was thinking, the 5 fingers on Xi Xieching's left hand started to move. Her little finger flicked out, and that golden saber light shook violently. Fourth Jin screamed and felt as if his chest was hit heavily by a big hammer. There was a sharp pain in his chest, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Her ring finger flicked out again, and the golden saber light vibrated. Fourth Jin's palm finally left the handle of the saber. Because at this moment, an unparalleled force suddenly came from the saber body. Both his hands let go of the saber handle instantly as if they had been electrocuted. The saber that no one was using still maintained the posture of slashing down violently and stayed in the air. But Fourth Jin's body had already rushed forward in a stumbling manner. He actually seemed to be moving on his own. He took 7 to 8 steps, turned half a circle, and circled to the front of Xi Xieching's body before stopping. His face was already full of fear. His eyes were filled with despair, and his body was trembling rapidly. Xi Xieching said lightly, "Kneel down." Fourth Jin's knees went soft, and he knelt down stiffly with a thud. At this moment, Xi Xieching gently closed her left hand and clenched it. With a snap, the golden saber light was crushed by her in the air and disappeared without a trace. The purple-gold saber that also stayed in the air was also crushed at the same time, turning into golden powder and falling down. Xi Xieching slowly retracted her palm. She looked up at Grand Uncle Han and asked lightly, "What did you say just now?" "I didn't hear it clearly." Grand Uncle Han stood there like a zombie. He stared dumbfoundedly at what happened in an instant just now. He only felt that his whole body was ice cold. A gush of hot blood almost rushed to his head, and he almost fainted from the rush. At this moment, Grand-Uncle Han felt a chill run down his spine, and all the way to his buttocks. This kind of cultivation, this kind of immortal-like means, it was impossible for him to do it. Not only could he not do it, among all the people he knew, there seemed to be no one who could do it, and just now, he actually asked this woman to have a one-on-one fight? A fair fight. The rules of the martial world. Have I gone crazy? At this moment, when he heard Zi Sheqing's question, he felt relieved and hurriedly said, "Nothing, I didn't say anything." He thought to himself, "You didn't hear it clearly? That's great." Zi Sheqing smiled faintly, like the blooming of spring flowers. But at this moment, those who saw this beautiful smile no longer had any lewd thoughts in their hearts. They even forcefully turned their eyes to the side, not daring to look at her. Zi Sheqing looked around and looked at the remaining 7 dumbfounded people. She ordered lightly, "The 7 of you, come over. Stand in a row 30 feet in front of me. Hurry up, don't dawdle." The 7 of them were already scared out of their wits. How would they dare to disobey her now? One by one, they stood obediently behind 4th Jin, who was kneeling on the ground. The 7 experts were really more obedient than primary school students at this moment. Zi Sheqing looked at them and smiled calmly. "I'm not a law enforcement officer of the heavens, do you know that?" Everyone nodded. Zi Sheqing said lightly, "Although I'm not a law enforcement officer, I also like to judge. Especially, I like to judge villains. Do you understand?" Everyone nodded again. Zi Sheqing pointed at 4th Jin, who was kneeling on the ground, and said lightly, "This person actually sneaked an attack on me. Haha, in your opinion, what should he be punished for?" Everyone was dumbfounded and didn't dare to say anything. Grand-Uncle Han stood at one side. His heart felt like it was being fried in oil. Endless feelings of humiliation surged into his heart. Today is Sister Zimo Shen's birthday. I wish her a happy birthday. Every year, there will be a day like this. Chish's birthday, TSK. What a coincidence. I have to say that this birthday is really chosen. According to the ancient legends, those who were born on Chishi were all naturally affectionate and infatuated. I wonder which handsome guy will be able to gain the favor and infatuation of this little sister. Haha. Everyone, you can leave your blessings in the book review and comment section. Maybe Sister Zimo Shen will be excited and touched. Thank you to Long Yinyu of the Alliance for his 4 blessings in the morning. Thank you to Tears of Bayan for his blessings. Thank you to Red Dust Stall for his blessings. Thank you to become the leader of the World Pride sect. Thank you everyone for your support. I will continue to explode today. I will celebrate Chishi with my explosiveness. Please vote. Chapter 923. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, Second Update. Grand-Uncle Han was full of bitterness and helplessness. Marshal Yin Yang, the other party, was judging his own people in front of him, and even wanted his subordinates to take the initiative to judge, point out the crimes and pronounce the charges. This was already the ultimate insult. And it was very obvious that this was done deliberately with the nature of endless humiliation, but he had no other choice. The other party's cultivation was much higher than his. Facing such a terrifying cultivation, he had no way to resist at all. Even if it was a humiliation, he could only accept it. Everyone looked at each other. What crime should he be charged with? How should this be explained? Zi Sheqing's face turned cold and she said slowly, "What I hate the most in my life is those who use their power to bully women. Today, I shall give a warning to this heavens." She said with a cold face, "This person is called 4th Jin. He usually commits all kinds of evil, indulges young ruffians, bullies women, men and women. His crimes are monstrous. I announce that he will be sentenced to death." 4th Jin, who was kneeling on the ground, raised his head desperately and said hoarsely, "You. What right do you have to convict me like this? You are also not a law enforcement officer." He was grabbed by Zi Sheqing and was controlled like a puppet. He knelt on the ground and couldn't move at all. It was as if 10 mountains were pressing on his body at the same time. He couldn't even move a finger. Now that he heard that he was convicted, he instantly struggled desperately and actually raised his head. He knew that Zhi Sheqing wanted to use him as an example. Once the evidence was conclusive, he would really be sentenced to death. At the critical moment of life and death, how could he not struggle to survive? You are neither a law enforcement officer nor the ruler of the heavens, nor the clan master of the Lan clan. You can kill me, but why do you have to convict me before I die? You said that I commit all kinds of evil. What proof do you have? Fourth Jin roared fiercely. Zhi Sheqing looked at him majestically. I am neither a law enforcement officer nor the ruler of the heavens, nor the clan master of the Lan clan. You are right about all these. But the only thing you don't know is, when you are not as good as me, I am the ruler in front of you. Everything about you, including your life, is decided by me. As for putting a crime on you before killing you, that's because I'm willing to do so. As for the proof that you have committed all kinds of evil deeds. Ha ha. Zhi Sheqing laughed. I have already convicted you. Even if I didn't, I still have proof. My words are proof. You have no regard for human life. Fourth Jin roared. Webb, I don't know how many people you've killed for your master all these years. I don't care if you've killed 1,000 or 10,000 people. It has nothing to do with me. But your master is a pervert. You can't break up a loving couple. Zhi Sheqing said coldly, when you go down to the netherworld, you must remember that although I'm not the ruler of this heavens, in this heavens, I am. It is the heavens. Fourth Jin groaned. This is hegemony. This is tyranny. You're being unreasonable. You're being unreasonable, Zhi Sheqing sneered. Reason? When have you ever seen us women being reasonable? Fourth Jin was speechless. The onlookers were also stunned. These words were truly too valiant. Even Chu Yang, who was far away, suddenly had goosebumps. All sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. Oh my God, I finally heard a woman speaking the truth today. Everyone was speechless. Zhi Sheqing said, the few of you, start to expose Fourth Jin's crimes now. I'll deal with whoever says the most complete. Everyone looked at each other. That Grand Uncle Han couldn't help but say, Your Excellency, although Fourth Jin has offended you, isn't your way of doing things a little too much? We're all comrades in the martial world. It's no big deal to kill someone. Why do you have to humiliate us like this? Seeing that he finally opened his mouth to plead for leniency, everyone's face was filled with excitement and hope. They all looked at him, their eyes full of pleading and trust. Zhi Sheqing turned to look at him and revealed a strange smile. She said slowly, You think that with your cultivation of first-grade supreme martial artist, you can always escape from me even if you can't defeat me. That's why you're fearless, right? You think that as a first-grade supreme martial artist, no matter where you speak, no matter who you're facing, I'll have to give you some face, right? You think that I'm a woman, and women are always soft-hearted. You only need to plead with good words, move with emotions and reason, and I'll give you a way out, right? Grand Uncle Han was stunned. Marshal Yin Yang's newest chapter. These words had truly struck a chord in his heart. He really thought so. Perhaps the seventh young master and the rest would definitely die today, but with his supreme martial artist divine senses, he would definitely be able to protect himself. The reason why he still stayed here now was that he wanted to try his best to bring a few more people back. Of course, it would be even more perfect if he could save the seventh young master from this woman's underling. No matter how strong this person was, she was still a woman, and women were always soft-hearted. She might not really kill him. As long as he persuaded her with good words and a sincere attitude, there might still be hope. Moreover, he still had another fluke thought in his heart. If he really managed to save the seventh young master, then he could start to build a relationship with her from now on. Who knows, she might become a strong helper for the clan. How many people had once become friends after being enemies? This kind of thing was not uncommon. If he were to plead as a supreme martial artist, if this woman was more sensible, she would give him a way out. Just as he was thinking, he did not expect the other party to say out all the thoughts in his heart. He could not help but blush. He smiled and said, "Even if I really think so, it seems to be understandable. Haha, Miss is a refined person, please be magnanimous and let them off. I can guarantee that after my master goes back, he will definitely turn over a new leaf and become a new man. Be magnanimous. Let them off." Zi Sheqing frowned and murmured, "Yes, miss, please be magnanimous and let them off this time." Granduncle Han saw that there seemed to be hope and could not help but become more energetic. Zi Sheqing frowned and looked at him, as if she was thinking about the feasibility. Granduncle Han was delighted. "Okay," Zi Sheqing said, "then I'll be magnanimous this time." "Thank you." Granduncle Han laughed happily. Zi Sheqing suddenly raised her hand and slapped hard on Granduncle Han's smiling face. She frowned and said, "Who allowed you to smile?" This slap was really crisp and clear, and it resounded through the whole place. This slap really came out of nowhere and was even more unreasonable. Everyone was stunned. Just now, everything was still fine, as if there was a lot of room for negotiation. But in the blink of an eye, Granduncle Han received such a loud slap. Everyone felt as if they had seen thunder, and they were all dizzy from the thunder. This also works. Granduncle Han's face quickly turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then slowly swelled up. He looked at Zi Sheqing in disbelief. His lips trembled, and his eyes were filled with grief and indignation, as well as disbelief. His fingers trembled. He really did not expect this. Even in his dreams, he did not expect this kind of thing to happen. This matter happened so suddenly that even a first-grade supreme martial artist like him couldn't dodge in time. Zi Sheqing frowned. The next moment, slap. Another loud slap landed on Granduncle Han's face. Zi Sheqing frowned and said, "What are you pointing at with your finger? Who allowed you to point?" This slap was still crisp and loud, and it was in the opposite direction. Granduncle Han still did not avoid it. As the saying goes, a slap in the opposite direction, a slap on the left side, a slap on the right side. The others were truly struck by heavenly lightning. At this moment, they were all like ducks that were scared silly. Everyone's face was filled with fear, despair, and even confusion. Oh my God, what's going on? Who in this generation had seen a supreme martial artist being slapped? And it was a slap in the opposite direction, back and forth. This first-grade supreme martial artist's face turned to the left with a slap, and then with another slap, it was slapped right again. This was really a fucking eye-opener. To be able to see a supreme martial artist being slapped, damn it. Even if they were to die today, it would be worth it. Their trip to this world was not in vain. Both sides of Granduncle Han's face suddenly turned into a monkey's buttocks and pig's cheeks, red and swollen, almost transparent. The next moment, Granduncle Han directly went mad with anger. As a supreme martial artist, in his more than 2,000 years of life, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? When had he ever been slapped? Even when he was learning martial arts, his teacher had never slapped him like this. Under the fury, Granduncle Han's rationality instantly collapsed. With a bang, the hair on his head directly stood up. He gritted his teeth and scolded, "Bitch! How dare you hit me?" Zi Sheqing looked at him strangely. "How dare you? Haven't I already slapped you? Don't you feel it? Huh? How dare you scold me?" Granduncle Han gritted his teeth as if he wanted to eat someone. He looked at her fiercely, his anger soaring to the sky. "How dare you hit me? How dare you hit me? How dare you hit me again? Do you dare to hit me again?" As he spoke, he approached her step by step. He looked ferocious and arrogant. He straightened his face and twisted his neck. His gaze was ferocious and indignant. Seeing that this guy actually approached her with his old face again, Zi Sheqing did not hesitate at all this time and raised her hand. Slap, slap, slap. More than a dozen slaps were thrown in a row, crisp and clear. As she slapped him, she said, "This trip out of the Black Blood Forest has really opened my eyes. There's actually such a bitch in this world. After being slapped, you actually want me to slap you again. Since you're so eager, I'll just slap you to my heart's content." And as Zi Sheqing slapped him, she asked, "Are you satisfied? Do you want more?" The sounds of slapping rang continuously. Everyone was instantly shocked. What the hell is going on? Why isn't Supreme Han fighting back? Just as they were thinking about this, they heard a heart-wrenching roar. Tilde bitch, I'm going to kill you. Tilde, he roared, but his voice was a little strange. It turned out that he was being beaten as he roared. When he roared at the end, his voice was trembling because of the slaps. That single R was actually slapped to several different rhythms. It sounded like the rhythm of his voice was undulating and undulating. If you're satisfied, please vote for me. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 924. Grand Uncle Han felt extremely strange. Because he was rushing forward ferociously, wanting to fight with his life on the line, now, he could only wash away his humiliation by fighting, no matter if he won or lost. His chest was about to explode from anger. But no matter how he rushed, he was still running in circles on the spot even though he clearly felt that his speed was as fast as the wind. Zi Xiecheng was just standing there, close to him, but he felt that she was far away from him. No matter how he rushed, he couldn't reach her. But the other party's slaps on his face were like a storm. The sounds of slaps mixed together into a pleasant sound, which actually had the rhythm of music. Grand Uncle Han rushed for a long time, and his face had been slapped countless times. Finally, he came to his senses. Could this be the legendary 10,000 miles in an inch? This was a secret technique of heaven and earth that only a mid-stage supreme martial artist could comprehend. The so-called 10,000 miles in 1 inch space was the use of a godly technique to create a unique domain. No matter what your cultivation was, as long as you were trapped in this domain, then even if you ran for a lifetime, you might not be able to escape from this 10,000 miles in 1 inch space. Within the 10,000 miles in an inch, one could usually travel a long distance with a single step. But once this realm was displayed, even if you ran for 10,000 miles, you could only run in circles on the spot. Grand Uncle Han broke out in a cold sweat, and his mind also became clear. He screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood. Suddenly, he turned around and was about to escape. He had already lost today. If this continued, not only would the 7th young master and the rest die, but he would also die here. Thinking of this, he immediately ran for his life. He turned around, but he forgot that he was still within the domain of the 10,000 miles in an inch. Therefore, even though he turned around and ran, he still stopped there without moving. Zi Xiecheng frowned. What? Have you had enough fun in the front? Now you want to change to the back? Alright, then I'll fulfill your wish. She lifted her leg and kicked him like a storm. In the eyes of the onlookers, this Grand Uncle Han was holding his face up and getting beaten up. But he was still not satisfied. He even turned around and raised his buttocks to receive the other party's huge kicks. So, everyone fainted. We've been with Supreme Martial Artist Han for so many years, but we've never heard of him having such a bad habit. What's going on? It was impossible for someone to be addicted to being beaten up, right? This was too ridiculous. However, Zi Xiecheng gave a reasonable explanation. You don't look young anymore. More than 1,000 years old? 1,800 years old, right? No one has beaten you up for so many years. Do you feel uncomfortable? Now that you've been beaten up by me, have you found the right feeling? You found that this feeling was so fresh and unforgettable, so you made me hit you again and again? Have you had enough? If you're done, then get out. I'm tired from kicking you, Zi Xiecheng said. As he spoke, his feet were merciless. The pitiful supremacy Han wanted to go out, but how could he? He could only stand up and take the kick while shouting and cursing in grief. His previous demeanor had long since disappeared. Everyone's eyebrows twitched as they watched. It was too bloody. A dignified supreme martial artist was beaten into a bloody pulp just like that. Moreover, he didn't even fight back. Today's matter was really strange. Moreover, as Zi Xiecheng beat up Supreme Martial Artist Han, she controlled 4th Jin and Lan Ruoyun at the same time and monitored the other 7 people to prevent them from escaping. She could be said to be multitasking. Moreover, her divine senses were still far away, paying attention to the situation of Wei Wuyan and his disciple. Finally, supreme martial artist hands cursing gradually weakened. Zi Xiecheng kicked him into the air and punched him in the chest. With a bang, supreme martial artist hand flew far away. He twitched twice on the ground and lost consciousness. Zi Xiecheng had already scattered his cultivation. Chu Yang, who was at the side, knew that this meant that she had played enough. She didn't want to drag on any longer. He looked at the others coldly. You guys don't have any other hopes, right? The 7 of them nodded repeatedly, their faces full of fear. They couldn't beat her. They couldn't escape. Even a dignified supreme martial artist had ended up in such a state. Who else would dare to cause trouble? Zi Xiecheng ordered. As for 4th Jin, execute him now. The 7 of you are in charge of executing him. You, the 2 of you, execute him. You, supervise the execution. You, the 4 of you, observe the execution. 315 cuts, a piece of flesh with each cut. If he dies after 315 cuts, the 7 of you will be executed together. Zi Xiecheng said lightly. The 7 of them were instantly dumbfounded. Isn't this too vicious? Chu Yang was a little impatient. This big sister had stayed in the Black Blood Forest for too long. It seemed that she was too lonely. She actually dilly-dallied for so long just to catch these few bad guys. He said lazily, forget it, don't torment them. Quickly execute them. Let's hurry on with our journey. Zi Xiecheng looked back and smiled. She said, I didn't want to torment them. Just like what they said, it's no big deal to kill them. However, I have never tolerated those who bully men and tyrannize women. I must use the cruelest means to torture them to death. Even if it's reincarnation, I must make them not dare to be evil. Chu Yang sighed deeply. Chu Le clenched her fists and said, Sister Zi, I support you. Although Chu Le was young, she also understood how harmful such people were to women. She had always hated them. Zi Xiecheng said lightly, Chu Yang, you're a man. You'll never know how much women hate such people who kidnap women. How many women's happiness was destroyed in their hands. Not only do they kidnap people, in order to prevent future troubles, they often eliminate the source of trouble. They let this family of innocent people die an unnatural death just because the woman is beautiful. But can it be a woman's fault if she's beautiful? Having a beautiful face is a gift from the heavens. But because of these scumbags, it became the root of the destruction of her family. Zi Xiecheng said lightly, so, when I see such people, I must kill them. Killing one of these people can save countless women, including their family members. Chu Yang was suddenly enlightened. So you purposely followed me with your real appearance to lure these perverts out one by one and kill them one by one? Zi Xiecheng smiled and nodded. Chu Yang, don't think that this is committing a sin by killing people. Those who have evil thoughts because of my appearance all deserve to die. You're enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens by killing them. This is not only not a sin, but also an endless merit. The more people you kill, the more women will have happy families because of you. Do you understand? Chu Yang was silent for a long time. Then, he let out a long breath. I understand. This may be the redemption of conscience. It also weakens the inner demons to a certain extent, because I'll feel that I've done a good thing. My heart will naturally be open and aboveboard, and I won't fear the heavens and earth. Zi Xiecheng's eyes were full of admiration. Yes, this is a kind of spiritual cultivation. I didn't expect you to understand my meaning so quickly. Chu Yang smiled. Since this is the case, I'll enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Zi Xiecheng laughed. You still think that I'm too slow? Fine, I'll let you handle it. As she said, she moved quickly. With a few slaps, all the Lan clan's experts were hit by her palm. This slap broke their bones and destroyed their cultivation. Chu Yang went forward with his sword. One slash, and killed all these people cleanly. If he let Zi Xiecheng do it, it would take a long time. Chu Yang didn't want to wait. With one slash, 4th Jin's eyes were full of despair, and he slowly fell to the ground. After this slash, his body actually shrank slowly and became a pile of white bones, which then dissipated with the wind. Calamity Sword, devouring the energy of living beings. These people were definitely going to die, and there were no outsiders here. Besides, the weakest of these people were monarchs, and there was even a supreme martial artist here. To the Calamity Sword, this was a huge amount of spiritual energy. It would be a pity to waste it. So, Chu Yang used the devouring power of the Calamity Sword without any hesitation. He devoured all the life essence of these experts and turned it into nutrients for the Calamity Sword. Zi Xiecheng frowned slightly. She looked at the corpses turning into white ashes under Chu Yang's sword. She seemed to be deep in thought. When the sword pierced into Supreme Martial Artist Han's throat, Chu Yang sighed slightly. So what if he was a first-grade Supreme Martial Artist after 2,000 years of cultivation? With one slash of his sword, everything turned into nothingness. It was as if he had never existed in this world. Everything was like the wind. The last one to be killed was of course Lan Ruoyun. Lan Ruoyun had already turned into a pile of mud without Zi Xiecheng destroying his cultivation. When he saw Chu Yang coming over, he repeatedly shouted, "You! Don't come over, don't kill me. I'm the 7th master of the Lan clan, you. If you kill me, the Lan clan won't let you off. I beg you. Spare my life." In the end, he actually shouted loudly for help. Chu Yang frowned. He was very surprised. Which one of the princes of the big clans that he had seen wasn't scheming and didn't show their emotions on their faces? Yi Shiyu, Li Batian, Meng Se. What kind of outstanding characters were they? Only such characters were fit to be called the princes of the big clans. But why was this Lan Ruoyun of the Lan clan so gutless? Such a cowardly person who bullied the weak and feared the strong, how did he become the 7th master of the Lan clan? You! Are you fit to be the master of a big clan? Chu Yang looked at him with disgust. Looking at you, I'm really disappointed in this big clan. Lan Ruoyun cried and said, "How would I know? Since I was born, I've been designated as the 7th master of the Lan clan. I don't have the final say in this matter." Chu Yang looked at him coldly. "How old are you?" "I'm 27. Lan Ruoyun looked at him timidly. "How many girls have you defiled all these years? Tell me the truth." Chu Yang glared and shouted. Lan Ruoyun's mind was subconsciously controlled. He said as if he was sleep-talking, "I really can't remember clearly. About 200 to 300. As he said, he actually revealed an expression of reminiscence. He actually laughed and said, "What I like the most is to snatch beautiful girls and do it in front of their husbands." Before he finished speaking, Chu Yang had already exploded because of this sentence of his. A surge of anger instantly rushed to his head. He shouted, "Bastard!" His long sword slashed down fiercely. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.